I felt the air rise up and kneel down and clear the stone of leaves. I wander out where you can't see. Inside my shell I wait and bleed. I felt the air rise up and kneel down and clear the stone of leaves. I wander out where you can't see. Inside my shell I wait and bleed. Goodbye, a woman of my town, and I didn't put up this time. Everything is turning fast for me. My ears are running cold, the air is standing straight on. This is not the way I picture me. I can't control my shakes. How the hell did I get here? Something about this so very wrong. I have to laugh out loud. I wish I didn't like this. Is it a dream or a memory?
Hey everybody, it's Amanda, and welcome back to the History of FMW, episode 39, where we will be going over the year 2011. Brett, can you start us off by summarizing 2010 for us?
So 2010 was kind of a down year for the entire pro wrestling industry, especially the Japanese independent scene. I always thought of 2010 as paying for all the sins that were made previously throughout the decade, bad decisions that had been made by wrestling companies, eventually resulted in the negative, the poor year that 2010 was as far as booking, as far as crowd interest. Just a lot of people don't really remember 2010 very fondly when it comes to pro wrestling. As far as the promotions that followed, FMW closing that were related to FMW, Freedom started the year kind of strong. As it was for themselves. They started as such a small promotion after the Apache Army had struggled so badly. Well, Takashi Sasaki kind of had something going with this Freedom's promotion, and he ran a successful Korakuen Hall show in June. They built it really well going into June, and then after that, the shows kind of fell apart. They did have a successful deathmatch tournament in August where they had two really successful Shinkiba shows, and then they had a very successful Christmas deathmatch show in December. But everything besides that really struggled for them. They really don't really know their identity. They don't want to be a deathmatch promotion, but every time they run a deathmatch show, it does so much better than the non-deathmatch shows. So they're at a stalemate right now of deciding what they want to be, and right now they're kind of fighting against being a deathmatch promotion, and their shows are suffering as a result right now. Super FMW, which was started up by Tarzan Goto, started the year doing decent with the nostalgia FMW, bringing in older FMW wrestlers, but by the end of the year, it nosedived to where it was pretty much a nothing promotion and running very, very small buildings to the point where even if you really wanted to cover them or follow them, it was almost impossible to, because they had taken such a nosedive at this, running so poorly at Shinkiba. And then at the end of the year, Tomohiko Hashimoto and Kazutaka Hasegawa, they would help finance and restart back up the Apache Army promotion with Kanamura as the face of the promotion. So this, with Takashi Sasaki letting go of the Apache Army name in 2009 and starting up Freedoms, this gave way for this new Apache Army promotion under new management to start up, kind of be a rival to the Freedoms promotion. They're both going to run Shinkiba once a month going into 2011, and so it's going to be pretty much two completely different promotions, although somewhat similar in size, running Shinkiba once every month here going into 2011.
Big Japan would hold a show on January 2nd at Korakuen Hall with several Freedoms wrestlers in a death match. Can you go over this match for us?
Yeah, so on this show, Jun Kasai and Jackie Numazawa, they would team up to take on the team of Takashi Sasaki and Kamui in a barbed wire board death match. Kamui and Sasaki, they would end up jumping Kasai and Numazawa before the bell. Kamui would end up sending Numazawa out of the ring and delivering an Asai moonsault onto everyone on the outside. They would end up getting back in the ring, and the massacre would begin as Numazawa would throw Kamui into the barbed wire board and break it over him, as both Numazawa and Kasai would step on the board over Kamui's body. Kasai would then unmask Kamui as Numazawa would take the barbed wire and begin cutting open Kamui's forehead. Kamui would get a little bit of offense, including a swanton bomb on Numazawa, but Numazawa would eventually end up hitting a Death Valley bomb on Kamui through the barbed wire board. Kasai and Numazawa would then double-team Kamui until Takashi Sasaki would come in to help take Kasai out of the ring, leaving Numazawa and Kamui to go one-on-one, with Numazawa hitting a stiff-looking powerbomb and then tagging in Kasai, who would hit a clothesline but would miss the Pearl Harbor Splash. Kamui would then lay the barbed wire board over Kasai and hit an Asai moonsault onto it, but then would end up going for a moonsault with Kasai getting up and picking up Kamui on his shoulders before dropping him and then placing the barbed wire board over Kamui and hitting a Pearl Harbor Splash on Kamui for the win. So Kasai and Numazawa pick up the win over Sasaki and Kamui. Afterwards, Kasai would mock Sasaki. So pretty much Kasai is a babyface in Freedoms that's friends with all these guys. But in Big Japan, he's a heel and he has no care in the world for any of them.
Freedoms would hold their first show of the year on January 6th at Shinkiba. Can you go over this show for us?
So they would announce a crowd of 143 fans for this show, which is pretty much what they were doing at the end of 2010 for a non-deathmatch show. These fans here, they're the loyal fans that are going to come every month regardless of the lineup or who's on the show. It's just pretty much where Freedoms is at this point. On this show, the opening match would be Takashi Sasaki, Jun Kasai, and Tatsuhito Takaiwa taking on Onryo and the Brahmin Brothers. So the Brahmin Brothers, they have joined back up with the Kajika Army. They would end up starting off by brawling in the crowd, with one of the Brahmin Brothers grabbing a fan's drink and spitting in Kasai's face. And to follow that up, one of the Brahmin Brothers would then grab a fan's meal and shove it in Kasai's face. They would end up throwing Kasai in the corner, with the Brahmin Brothers and Onryo walking like a zombie to choke Kasai. And then Kasai would eventually manage to tag in Takaiwa, who would pick up both Brahmin Brothers on his back and hit a Death Valley bomb on both of them. Sasaki would end up getting tagged in, and Brahmin Brother Ki would end up putting Tabasco sauce in his mouth and trying to spit it in Takashi Sasaki's face. But Sasaki would end up covering Ki's mouth and kicking him, forcing Ki to swallow the Tabasco sauce. Ki would then try to pour a bucket of ice on Sasaki, but Sasaki would end up dumping the ice on him instead, and Sasaki would end up finishing Ki off with a D-Geist on the ice for the win. And then the semi-main event's going to be the Great Kajika and Jintaro teaming up to take on Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, a former All Japan and Noah wrestler that had recently began appearing for Freedoms at the end of 2010. And he's going to team up with Shigehiro Arai, a DDT wrestler. In this match, Jintaro and Kajika, they would tie Kikuchi up to the turnbuckle outside the ring, as the Brahmin Brothers would spit a drink in his face as well as dump trash all over him. Eventually, Kikuchi would manage to get out, but as he would end up hitting the ring, Kikuchi and Arai, they would accidentally end up sandwiching the referee, as Kajika and Jintaro would tie them all up, including the referee, to the turnbuckle again, with the referee throwing the match out, DQing Kajika to give the win to Kikuchi and Arai. Then the main event's going to be Takashi Sasaki having a series of matches, 11 different opponents, but each match is only going to be a 2-minute time limit. The first match he's going to have is against Jun Kasai, and Kasai would end up going after Sasaki right away with the lariat, and then Kasai would end up trying for another lariat, but Sasaki would catch him and hit a reverse Tiger Driver for the win in 36 seconds. So Sasaki gets the win right away over Kasai in the first match. Sasaki would then go on to face Takawa Morai, Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Kazuhiko Ogasawara, with the Karate Mummy getting involved in their match, as well as Riki Fuji. All those matches go into a 2-minute time limit draw. Kiri Yano would be the next one to come out, and he would actually end up rolling up Sasaki for the upset pin, so Yano ends up getting the first victory over Sasaki. Kamui would end up coming out next and hitting a bad-looking moonsault off a ladder before setting up the ladder on the bleacher stands, as Kamui would end up climbing up to try and hit a moonsault off the ladder set up against the bleachers. The 2-minute time limit would expire there. The next would be the Winger, who would end up going to another 2-minute time limit draw with Sasaki before the Great Kajika would end up coming out. next, and Kikuchi would end up hitting the ring, going after Kajika, still upset from earlier on the show, as the Brahmin brothers, they would end up coming out to help out Kajika, while Sasaki is just in the corner watching all this as the 2-minute time limit would expire there. The next one would be Mama Sasaki, and he would end up just clearing the ring and hitting Takashi Sasaki with a powerbomb, and then a 29 years old, but the 2-minute time limit would expire right as Mammoth would be able to make the pinfall. And then the last person to come out would be Goru Tsurumi, who had ran the IWA Kokusaki promotion in 1996 that Takashi Sasaki had gotten started in the business with, and Tsurumi had also worked for FMW in 1994 as well. So this is kind of Sasaki taking on his teacher, the one who got him started in the business. Tsurumi would then let Sasaki back up to his feet after Mammoth had done a number on him, and Sasaki would get back up to his feet, and Tsurumi would begin punching Sasaki, knocking him down, and then Tsurumi would place Sasaki in an ankle lock and then begin stretching Takashi Sasaki before the 2-minute time limit would finally expire, as Takashi Sasaki would end up going 1-1-9 in these 11 bouts. 11 bouts to symbolize 2011. So this was, Takashi Sasaki, this is going to be his year, his 15th year anniversary starting in pro wrestling. So this was a big year for him, and he runs the promotion, he makes the decisions. He's right now is the top guy of the promotion, and so the main event's going to be based all around him. As the year goes by, we'll go over here. He's kind of realized that some other wrestlers are going to need to be pushed on top, especially more popular ones like Jun Kasai.
The Apache Army would run their first show of the year on January 28th at Shinkiba, with the main event consisting of 2 former FMW wrestlers facing off against each other. Can you tell us what happened in the match?
So they would announce a crowd of 238 fans for this show, which, considering the Apache Army had drawn 140 fans earlier in the month, shows that the Apache Army definitely is exaggerating, because there's no way they're drawing over 100 more fans than Freedom's here. The main event's going to be Masato Tanaka taking on Tetsuhiro Kuroda. This is Tanaka's first time in this Apache Army. They're gonna have the same moves they're gonna do the same moves that they did 10 years prior in FMW, but Kuroda's not at the level he was a decade earlier, and the crowd atmosphere is just nowhere near what the crowd was at Korakuen Hall back in late 90s, 2000. But the Apache Army did make a really good decision. They got in contact with this pro wrestling fan, Kiji Suzuki, and him and his friend essentially they would bring in drums in the crowd, and they would just bang on the drums throughout the show and chant and scream for the baby faces. So they're really passionately screaming for Kuroda here, so that this show doesn't come off as a near death, with not that many fans and not that not that much energy. They definitely provided energy with the drum and passionately chanting for the Apache Army wrestler's name so this show doesn't appear quiet and depressing. Tanaka would end up trying for a sliding D, but Kuroda would manage to duck it, and as Tanaka was going to go for a suplex, Kuroda would end up kicking Tanaka low and rolling him up with the Samson clutch for 2, followed by a lariat. Tanaka would eventually end up nailing Kuroda with an elbow, followed by the sliding D that would connect this time for the win. Afterwards, Tanaka and Kuroda shake hands to end the show. So, again, this isn't anything like what they were doing in FMW at the prime with the passionate crowd, at Corrigan. This is a small, Kuroda is definitely not who he was. Tanaka is still at the near level of what he was 10 years prior, but Kuroda's definitely not. The fan base here in this building, despite the 2 fans that are passionately pounding on a drum, can't, replicate a hot Korakuen Hall fan base. So overall, this is nowhere near the level of what they were doing, but still a good match for what the Apache Army is going to produce for most of 2011.
Freedoms would return to Shinkiba on February 14th with a new idea to see about increasing the attendance. Can you tell us what happened on this show?
So they would announce a crowd of 187 fans for this show, slightly up than what they've been doing over the last couple months. I'll go over here in a second, most likely why there was about 40 more fans or so than what they've been doing. On this show, the group, the TKG48, would debut in Freedoms, and that group consists of Senzuhiro Takagi, Minoru Sawa, and Shigehiro Arai. Because of the Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Shigehiro Arai match against the Kajika Army last month, Shigehiro Arai now has called in the reinforcements, his own group, to take on the Kajika Army. And Arai's not even going to be in this match, but it's going to be Senzuhiro Takagi and Minoru Sawa representing the TKG48 going up against the Kajika Army members, Great Kajika and Jintaro, with the stipulation that if the Great Kajika's team loses, then he's going to be banished from Freedoms. So Takagi and Sawa, they would end up going after Kajika and Jintaro right away to start the match, and then they would begin brawling around ringside. Sawa would end up running across the building to hit Jintaro with a Shining Wizard into the crowd, and then they would end up getting back in the ring, and Takagi and Sawa would begin delivering drop kicks to Kajika until Sawa would get too wrapped up into it and end up drop kicking Takagi, his own partner. Takagi would end up getting revenge on Sawa by picking him up and trying to hit a Death Valley bomb on him, on Kajika, but Kajika would end up moving out of the way, and then Kajika would end up putting the Iron Claw on Takagi and hitting him with a choke slam, with Sawa and Shigehiro Arai making the save, which would cause the entire Kajika army to hit the ring, as including Kazuhiko Ogasawara, but Ogasawara would end up turning on Kajika and laying Kajika out. And then the entire TKG48 group would end up hitting Shining Wizards on Kajika, followed by Takagi hitting a stunner on Kajika for the win. So Ogasawara has joined Takagi's TKG48 group. Kajika would end up getting on the mic afterwards and saying goodbye to Jintaro, Antonio Honda, and the Brahmin brothers, as it would look like the Kajika army would now be gone, would be over, with Kajika having to leave Freedoms due to losing the match. And then the main event's going to be Yuko Miyamoto defending the CZW Ultra-Violent Underground title against the Winger in a Lumberjack death match. This is why the show did a little better. The fact that Freedoms was willing to do a death match as the main event for this show. Freedoms had a no death match stipulation rule for the promotion unless it was a Jun Kasai promoted show. Well, this is, they're still going to have a death match on this Freedom show because it's for a death match promotion. And their deathmatch title, and so we'll allow a deathmatch when this title belt is being defended. But it was really just kind of another excuse for Freedoms to go, let's see about this deathmatch. Jun Kasai shows are doing so much better than our shows. Let's see if we do put a deathmatch in the main event, if it really does make a difference in regards to more people coming. And like I said, this show did a little better, not like a Jun Kasai promoted deathmatch show, which is selling out Shinkiba with over 400 fans, but it did do a little better than what the struggling shows have been doing lately. So in this match, Miyamoto, he would start off by setting up a board in the corner and then tossing the Winger through the board and then throwing a wooden log at him. And then Miyamoto would take a bigger wooden log and begin swinging it, but he would end up missing the Winger. And the Winger would end up trying to get out of the ring to avoid this big wooden log, but the wrestlers would end up making sure that the Winger would stay in the ring. And then Miyamoto would end up throwing that big log at the Winger, but he would end up missing him. The Winger would end up fighting back and taking a wooden stick and begin cutting open Miyamoto with it. But Miyamoto would come back by unmasking the Winger and cutting him open. A lot of time is just spent on the wrestlers cutting up one another, too much time just standing there, making the other bleed. Eventually, Miyamoto, he would end up taking the Winger to the ramp of Shinkiba, with the other wrestlers trying to stop him, but Miyamoto would end up attacking them, fighting them all off until Mema Sasaki would show up and hit Miyamoto and deliver a running powerbomb, sending Miyamoto back into the ring. The Winger would then slam Miyamoto through a board, but he would end up missing a senton splash as Miyamoto would put a log on the Winger and hit a moonsault onto him, and then hit a Fire Thunder on the log, followed by another moonsault on the Winger for the win. So Yuko Miyamoto defends the title in this death match. Overall, like I said, too much standing around. I wouldn't say it was a good match by any means. Afterwards, Jun Kasai would end up coming to the ring and challenging Miyamoto for the CCW Ultraviolet Underground title. So they're going to do another death match next month with a higher profile guy in Jun Kasai taking on Miyamoto instead of the Winger to see if that helps draw the next show. So they're kind of just pretty much testing things out to see, okay, we're going to do this death match here. Now let's see how a Jun Kasai death match does on a regular Freedom show. So again, they're just kind of testing the waters to see what really clicks. They know the all death match Jun Kasai theme show will click, but they don't, they can't do that every month. Or it'll lose its specialness, so they're going to try and see, hey, can just Jun Kasai take, in a death match draw for us? So again, they're just kind of tinkering, experimenting at this point. The promotion's still under a year and a half old at this point, so they're just kind of trying to see what works and what doesn't.
The WEW title would be defended for the first time in over 2 years on February 26th at Shinkiba for the Apache Army. What happened on this show?
So on this show, it's going to be the debut of Ricky Maru. Ricky Maru was a 38-year-old pro wrestling fan who wanted to be a wrestler, and despite his age, they still accepted him to train and become a wrestler. And Ricky Maru by no means is, just starting out, he isn't necessarily talented, or he doesn't have a great body. And again, he's 38 years old, but at this point, it really depends on if they like you, if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to put in show the passion that you want to do this, and you can, for a small promotion like the Apache Army at this point, if they like you, then you can fit in their undercard match, the undercard regime where, okay, you're gonna take on, likewise wrestlers that don't have that much talent, and you're not going to have that great of matches, but again, if they like you, then you can find a spot in this promotion. And that's what happened with Ricky Maru. They liked him, and there's no plans of him ever main eventing a show or anything like that, but they're going to see what he has, and again, it's kind of his dream, and they're going to see what they can do to help him accomplish his dream by letting him be a pro wrestler as long as he continues to put the work in. And he's gonna make his debut against Tomohiko Hashimoto. They would let Ricky Maru kind of show some fight during this match, get some strikes in on Hashimoto before Hashimoto would just begin palming Ricky Maru in the head, knocking him down as Kanemaru would end up coming to the ring and calling for the bell, and the match would be stopped. So Hashimoto would win via TKO. So again, Hashimoto is an experienced wrestler. Ricky Maru has no shot. Again, they let Ricky Maru show some offense here, but obviously, he's not in the same world as someone even like Tomohiko Hashimoto. And then the main event's going to be Kentaro Kanemaru challenging for the WEW World Heavyweight title against Tomohiro Ishii. Ishii had won the title back in July 2008 against Mama Sasaki, and he defended it against Kuroda in November, and then he defended the title against Kanemaru in January 2009, and after defeating Kanemaru, the title just kind of went dormant. It wasn't talked about, and Ishii was just the champion, never defending it up until December 2010, when Kanemaru was on a Tenryu project card, and Ishii would end up attacking him and going, hey, I'm still the WEW champion, and no one's ever challenging me for it, and I kind of got the WEW title name back in the mix with this new Apache Army promotion starting up, and so Kanemaru is going to challenge for the title. This is the first time the title's being defended by Ishii in over 2 years, when Kanemaru last challenged for it in January 2009. So in this match, Kanemaru, he would come to the ring and begin doing the Team No Respect dance. When Ishii would hit the ring and jump Kanemaru, they would exchange chops and strikes before Ishii would take Kanemaru in the crowd and throw him in a stack of chairs, with Kanemaru getting back in the ring bleeding. Ishii would end up hitting Kanemaru with a lariat, and then follow that up with hitting him with a brainbuster off the top rope, as the fans are really chanting for Kanemaru here. There's not that many fans, but they are passionately chanting for Kanemaru, wanting him to win the title back for the Apache Army. They would eventually begin headbutting one another and then striking each other, with Ishii hitting a lariat, but only getting a 2 count, and then going for another lariat, but Kanemura would end up turning that lariat into a backslide, and Kanemura would end up getting the 3 count over Ishii to win the WEW title for the Apache Army. So all the Apache Army wrestlers end up coming to the ring afterwards and lifting Kanemura up on their shoulders as Kanemura holds the WEW title. It's kind of a recreation of when Kanemura had originally won the title in FMW, and all the heel wrestlers lifted him up. This scene, not as cool as the FMW scene. It's, not as many wrestlers, and but again, it's just trying to recreate this scene. But Kanemura has now finally won back the WEW title. So after 2.5 years of being champion, granted almost 2 of those 2.5 years were, the belt was never even brought up or mentioned. But Ishii finally has dropped the WEW title, and now Kanemura is the champion. And so this promotion now has its title belt to kind of, be used for. So the WEW title is now going to be kind of a focal point.
Jun Kasai and Masashi Takeda would have another singles death match on March 21st at Korakuen Hall for Big Japan. What happened in this match?
So this is going to be a fluorescent light tubes, iron cage, Kinzon death match between the two. They would start this match off by grabbing light tubes and smashing them over their own heads before squaring off, with Takeda knocking Kasai out of the ring and delivering a dive to Kasai outside the ring. They would end up getting back in the ring with Kasai grabbing the bucket of Kinzons, but Takeda would end up taking that bucket from him and dumping them over himself, and then suplexing Kasai off the top rope onto the Kinzons, and then Takeda would end up taking Kasai onto the apron where he would try to spear him, but Kasai would end up catching him and suplexing Takeda off the apron to the outside. Kasai would then end up climbing up to the top of the iron cage, but Takeda would end up coming up as well, with Kasai suplexing Takeda off the top of the iron cage onto the Kinzons laying on the mat in a really cool spot. Kasai would then put one of the Kinzons in Takeda's head and try to smash him over the head with the chair, but Takeda would end up punching the chair right in Kasai's face. Takeda would then grab a Kinzon and stick it in Kasai's head and smash him over the head with the chair, causing the Kinzon to stick in Kasai's skull. Takeda would then hit Kasai's own reverse Tiger Driver on him, followed by a German suplex, with Kasai still managing to kick out with the Kinzon still stuck in his head. Takeda would then go over towards the iron cage with light tubes in it and try to send Kasai into it, but Kasai would stop himself short and send Takeda flying into the iron cage with light tubes in it instead, with Takeda no-selling the spot and getting up immediately and hitting a German suplex on Kasai. Takeda would then place Kasai back on top of the iron cage, but Kasai would begin delivering headbutts to Takeda and then place Takeda on his shoulders as they would both end up falling off the top of the iron cage, coming down, hitting the mat, with Kasai getting up right away and hitting a running headbutt on Takeda, and then climbing up to the top of the iron cage again, but Takeda would end up climbing up as well, with Kasai picking up a cushion of a chair from earlier and smashing it over Takeda's head, causing Takeda to fall off the iron cage, and Kasai would end up hitting a Pearl Harbor splash off the iron cage for the win. So Kasai gets the win over Takeda once again. Takeda still has never defeated Kasai, even though they're having awesome matches, and Takeda is definitely getting better and stronger and putting more offense into his matches against Kasai each time. But Kasai is more established. He's the bigger name. He's the bigger star. So Takeda's kind of his disciple. So they're building towards Takeda one day getting a singles win over Kasai, but today is not the day.
Freedoms would have another death match as the main event for the March 22nd show in Shinkiba. Can you talk about this show for us?
So they would announce a crowd of 189 fans for this show, just 2 more than the previous show, and I would consider that a disappointment considering they had Jun Kasai in the main event instead of the Winger. But on this show, Jintaro and Antonio Honda are going to team up with a mystery opponent to take on Sanzahiro Takagi, Shigehiro Arai, and Kazuhiko Ogasawara, so the TKG-48 going up against the Kajika Army. No one would show up for Jintaro and the Winger as a mystery partner partner for him. So the TKG group, they would just jump Jintaro and Honda and throw them outside the ring, where they would end up tossing Jintaro in the crowd. They would focus on Jintaro during this match, with Takagi hitting Jintaro with the fireman's carry, with Arai going up to the top for a moonsault, when the lights would turn off, and the Great Kajika would come to the ring with new music and face paint, as he would be introduced as the Great Deer. And he would also have wooden sandals with him as a weapon. The Great Deer, so Kajika means deer in Japanese, so he's dressed, or he's his new gimmick is that he's like a deer, so he's going by a different name, so that explains why he can come back in Freedoms, even though the Great Kajika had pretty much been kicked out of Freedoms due to losing loser leaves match. But now the Great Deer, Kajika and face paint, with the new gimmick, has appeared, and the Great Deer would slowly charge at Takagi and miss him, with Takagi placing a note on the Great Deer's chest, which would cause him to freeze in the corner completely. The Brahmin brothers, they would come out and mess with the Great Deer before finally taking the note off him, unfreezing him, and then the Great Deer would throw powder in Ogasawara's face, with Jintaro pinning Ogasawara for the win. So again, this was just kind of establish Kajika with his new gimmick as the Great Deer for the next couple months, just to kind of spice things up, change things up with Great Kajika. But the Kajika Army is once again under the control of Great Kajika, just now as the Great Deer. And then the main event's going to be Yuko Miyamoto defending the CZW Ultra-Violent Underground Championship against Jun Kasai in a glass board death match. They would start off by sending each other over the top rope, with Miyamoto picking Kasai up and dropping him on a chair before taking Kasai up the bleachers and banging Kasai's head up against the wall of Shinkiba, before taking a Kasai banner that was hanging on the wall of the back of Shinkiba and bringing it in the ring to choke Kasai with it. Miyamoto would then begin smashing a chair over Kasai's knee, and then Miyamoto would end up sending Kasai through the first glass board. Kasai would then come back and throw Miyamoto into the ropes, where Miyamoto would do a handspring and spring himself back over to Kasai and put Kasai in an ankle lock. Kasai would end up getting out of it and then hitting Miyamoto with a lariat and then a reverse tiger driver, and then placing the other glass board over Miyamoto's body while setting it up on a stack of chairs, as Kasai would end up going up to the top, but Miyamoto would get up and pick Kasai up and hit a fire thunder off the top rope, sending Kasai through the glass board. An awesome spot. Miyamoto would then end up hitting a moonsault, but Kasai would kick out of it, and he would end up going for another one, but Kasai would end up getting up and putting Miyamoto on his shoulders and sending Miyamoto's head into the turnbuckle, and then Miyamoto would end up trying for a handspring elbow, but Kasai would end up catching him and hitting a reverse tiger driver for the win. So a really cool spot with the Miyamoto sending Kasai through the glass board with the fire thunder, but overall the match was subpar, nothing special or anything, especially what both these guys would end up doing with one another in future matches. But again, this was just Freedom's attempt of, let's see if these death matches really can connect with the crowd, we can draw more fans, and they're drawing a little bit more fans, but the fact that Kasai's in the main event didn't really make it that much of a difference. And again, nothing really special of a match that these two would have, even though they're using the glass boards, which usually signifies a special match taking place.
A huge star would wrestle for the Apache Army on March 25th at Shinkiba. Who was this star, and can you talk about his match?
So the big attraction for this show is they're bringing in Vader. Vader had a relationship with Tomohiko Hashimoto, who had helped promote Vader shows, Team Vader shows in Japan a couple years earlier. And so with Hashimoto running the Apache Army, he's got Vader to agree to this one-time only spot where Vader's going to team up with his son, Jesse White, and Tomohiko Hashimoto, and they're going to take on Kentaro Kanemaru, Tetsuhiro Kuroda, and Tomohiro Waki. Waki was a rookie who had just started up with the Apache Army when this restarted the Apache Army formed in December 2010. In this match, Vader would start off by clotheslining Hashimoto and then Jesse White, his son, but Jesse would end up staying on his feet, so it was kind of a test to see who's, man enough to handle, a Vader clothesline. Vader and Kanemaru, they would start off with Vader hitting a choke slam on Kanemaru, and then Vader would eventually get Waki in the corner and begin just destroying him with punches. Eventually, Waki would manage to tag in Kuroda, who Vader would end up hitting a choke slam and then a lariat on, before finally finishing Kuroda off with a Vader bomb for the win. So the Vader team gets the win. Really a nothing match. The whole appeal to this match and this show really was, hey, come see Vader on this small independent promotion. Vader would end up getting on the mic afterwards and talking to the fans about the Sendai earthquake that had happened about 2 weeks earlier. Kanemaru would end up translating it for Vader so the crowd can understand what he's saying, as the fans would begin chanting, "Thank you, Vader," as all 6 of the wrestlers would end up posing with one another and taking pictures with each other to end the show.
Freedoms would have one more deathmatch main event on March 26th in Fukuoka that was memorable for the wrong reason. What happened in this match?
Yeah, so this is going to be a pool of blood death match. So they're really promoting the death match here with Kasai defending the CZW Ultraviolent Underground title here in the main event. Jintaro, he would end up pulling out scissors early on and begin cutting open Kasai, and then sending Kasai to the outside, where Jintaro would hit the Asai moonsaults and then bring Kasai back into the ring as Jintaro would continue to use scissors. So like I said, they're really promoting the blood here, the blood aspect here. Eventually Kasai would pick up a chair, but Jintaro would deliver a drop kick to the chair and then place Kasai in the corner as Jintaro would climb up to the top of the other side of the ring, and Jintaro would try for a Van Terminator, but he would come up completely short here in a total botchamania spot. This is embarrassing how badly Jintaro screwed this spot up by coming up so short here. Jintaro, he would try and make it up by climbing up back to the top, but Kasai would smash him over the head with a chair. Kasai would then end up taking Jintaro to the outside and pile driving him, and then bringing him back into the ring, and eventually hitting Jintaro with a reverse Tiger Driver, and then a Pearl Harbor Splash for the win. Really not much of a match. Again, a lot of just using scissors to make one another bleed, and then the Jintaro screw up here with the Van Terminator was definitely the low light of the match. It's supposed to be the spot of the match, and just Jintaro screwing it up. That's really the only thing I remember about this match before watching it again 8 years later, was just how badly Jintaro screwed this spot up. And again, really nothing of a match to make up for the fact that that spot was so messed up.
Freedoms would go back to a non-death match main event on April 21st at Shinkiba. How did this show do as a result, and can you go over it?
So they would announce 138 fans for this show, which is kind of what they were doing at the end of 2010 anyway. So it's apparent that the death matches with Miyamoto draw about an extra 50 or so fans for it. But, with no death match here, again, they're just kind of back to what they were doing prior to the death match experiment. The semi-main event here is Senshiro Takagi teaming up with a mystery partner, and they're going to take on the Great Deer and Jintaro. No one would come out with Takagi, so the Great Deer and Jintaro, they would end up double teaming Takagi with the Great Deer throwing powder in Takagi's face and then hitting him with a choke slam and then covering Takagi when the lights would turn off and Taka Michinoku's theme would begin to play, as Taka Michinoku would end up coming out as the Great Taka Michinoku with face paint, so he's doing the Great Muta gimmick here. Ogasawara with face paint and Minori Sawa as Lingerie Muto, they would end up hitting the ring as Taka would end up spitting mist in the Great Deer's face, with Takagi getting the win over the Great Deer. So again, the TKG 48 group won up the Kojika army here. And then the main event is the Freedoms team of Takashi Sasaki, Jun Kasai, and Kamui taking on kind of a strong style team of Takao Omori, Tatsuhito Takaiwa, and Masashi Takeda. So Takeda and Takaiwa, they're reforming their tag team that they were regularly doing in 2010, as well as teaming up with Omori here. There really wasn't too much to this match. Takaiwa would end up finishing off Kamui with a Death Valley Bomb for the win. So again, just really really wasn't anything special on this show. It really was just a standard Freedom Shinkiba show where Freedom's kind of right now is in a rut, especially with the fact that they don't know if they're a deathmatch promotion or not. They don't want to be, but like I said, when they have a standard show like this where there's no death matches, they draw a less of a crowd, and really the shows aren't anything special, especially here with, especially here where, the semi-main event with the TKG 48 and going up against the Kajika Army probably has more interest than the main event, where it's just a straight match between the Freedoms guys and just kind of these strong style outsiders.
Nanjyo Hayato would promote a show in Osaka against Atsushi Onita on April 22nd. Can you remind people who Nanjyo was and go over this match for us?
So I talked about Nanjyo Hayato going back to Volume 16, where he was a junior heavyweight wrestler for FMW in the undercard from 93 to 99. He's probably best known for some of his matches in 96, Kawasaki Stadium against Jason the Terrible, and then having a really awesome no-ropes barbed wire six-man death match with him being the star of the match, doing a moonsault off the ladder, and he definitely had he had a lot of talent, but he had suffered injuries and just kind of fell out of favor with FMW. He left and came back, and he never really stuck with FMW, and that's why he's probably not even really known too well for his FMW time, even though he was there for 5-6 years or so. But after he left FMW, he would join Osaka Pro, which is probably where he's now best known for working for a good 10 years or so as Miracle Man, the masked Miracle Man. And around this point, he has now left Osaka Pro, and he wants to promote, but he's still in the Osaka region, and so he's going to promote this show where he's going to bring in Atsushi Onita, and I feel like Nanjyo pretty much around this time period is really kind of feeling nostalgic for FMW. He didn't necessarily get started in the business in FMW, but his early years were with FMW, and he even stated, he felt like a troubled son to Shoshi Arai, leaving and coming back and always having issues and everything, and might not even been worth all the issues that he was bringing to the table. But, he's starting to feel nostalgic for FMW, and so he's going to book Atsushi Onita in a match with himself as the main event for this show, and they would start off with Nanjyo coming to the ring wearing an Onita leather jacket. Onita would end up taking Nanjyo outside the ring and smashing him in the back with a chair, followed by bringing Nanjyo in the ring and hitting him over the head with a chair. Onita would end up hitting a Vader Bomb on Nanjyo, which is a very impressive looking spot for a 53-year-old Onita with very bad knees. Onita would then end up hitting a Thunderfire Powerbomb and then putting Nanjyo in the corner and going for a chair shot, but Nanjyo would move out of the way and climb up to the top and hit a flying drop kick on Onita, and then Nanjyo would climb up to the top again, where Onita would meet him with spitting red mist in his face. Onita would then try to hit Nanjyo over the head with the chair, but Nanjyo would move out of the way and then deliver a kick to the head and roll up Onita for the win. So this would actually be Onita's first singles loss since 2003. Onita would pretty much no-sell the loss and go straight to doing his Onita theater and spit water in Nanjo's face before leaving. So I would imagine this is, hey, Onita, I'm going to pay for you to main event this match I've always wanted to have with you, but I'm going to pay even extra for you to lose, because Onita's not going to go cheap if he's going to lose. So I think this was just Nanjo's, kind of his fantasy booking of, I've always wanted, when I was the undercard wrestler and Onita was the man in FMW, I, always dreamed of having this match, and you know what? Now Onita's willing to take a certain amount of money for me to pay him, for me to main event against him and defeat him. And, like I said, Onita's willing to lose to an Nanjyo, but afterwards he's, for the right amount of money, but he's not going to even sell this loss. He's going to go get straight up and just do his own Onita theater regardless. And, I think this is really just for Nanjyo, because nobody remembers Onita losing to Nanjyo, and if people even remember who Nanjyo Hayato is.
The Apache Army would bring back the WEW Tag Team titles for their April 28th show in Shinkiba. Can you go over this, Matt?
Yeah, so on this show, Hiroki, he ends up making his first appearance for the Apache Army. I talked about how Hiroki returned about this time last year from his neck injury after being out for about 2.5 years or so. But Hiroki is a freelance worker, and so he's not tied down to freedoms, but he has a loyalty to Kanemaru as well, because after his injury in 2007, Kanemaru ran a benefit show to help pay for Hiroki's hospital bills, knowing he was going to be out of action for so long. So Hiroki has a loyalty to Kanemaru, and so he's gonna, and hey, it's an extra paycheck as well, getting to work for 2 promotions. So Hiroki's going to begin appearing here and become a regular for the Apache Army. He's gonna take on Yusaku Obata, another young, talented high flyer wrestler. And Hiroki, he's gonna end up getting the win over Obata with the trance rave kick. Afterwards, they would shake hands. So Hiroki and Obata, they're gonna form a tag team here in the Apache Army as kind of the young high flying team, to kind of make up for the fact that most of the top guys in the Apache Army are not only older, but they're a lot slower. They're definitely a different style than what Obata and Hiroki bring to the table. And then the main event's going to be Kohei Sato and Kamikaze, who are the WEW Tag Team Champions. They've been the Tag Team Champions since 2009, when they won the titles in XWF. And then, kind of like the WEW title, those titles kind of went dormant for a couple years. Well, they're, Apache Army, like I said, is bringing him back. And Kanemaru is going to team up with Arashi here to challenge for them. With Kanemaru having the WEW title, it's kind of a thing, like, let's now focus on, winning the titles back from the outsiders to bring the tag team titles to the Apache Army. In this match, Sato and Kamikaze, they would work on Kanemaru until he would end up making the hot tag to Arashi, with Arashi taking charge of the match and hitting Kamikaze with a powerbomb until tagging in Kanemaru, who would begin chopping away at Kamikaze before hitting him with a senton splash, with Sato making the save by hitting Kanemaru with the German suplex and then hitting a pile driver, with Kamikaze coming in and hitting a moonsault onto Kanemaru for the win. So Kamikaze and Sato retain the WWE Tag titles, so the tag titles are going to remain with the outside team. This would upset Arashi a lot, who would begin talking down to Kanemaru for losing and challenge Kanemaru for the WEW World title at the next show. So this is Arashi's heel turn. He's pretty much going to separate himself from Kanemaru here, when Hiroki and Obata, they would end up jumping in the ring and attacking Sato and Kamikaze, and they would challenge for the WEW Tag Team titles at the next show. So the next show is going to have Kanemaru and Arashi for the WEW title, and the main event is going to be Hiroki and Obata going up against Sato and Kamikaze, as the WEW Tag titles really are going to be kind of the main focus here for the next couple months, with Kanemaru knowing, hey, I've got the title belt, and I'm not an elite worker at this point like I had been a couple years earlier. Obata and Hiroki, they're top guy, they're really good workers. They could have a great main event, whereas I probably can't. So again, the WEW Tag titles, they're going to be kind of the main focus here for the next couple months for the Apache Army.
Big Japan would run their big show at the Yokohama Bunka Gym on May 5th. Can you go over the title matches on this show?
Yeah, so going back to November 2010, Jun Kasai and Jackie Numazawa, they had won the Big Japan Tag Team titles against Daisuke Sekimoto and Yoshihito Sasaki in a barbed wire death match. A really awesome match that saw Kasai do the Jinsei Shinsaki prayer rope walk, but on barbed wire. And they would end up winning the tag team titles there, and they're going to defend the tag team titles on this show against Yuko Miyamoto and Asami Kodaka in an iron cage, light tubes, ladder, spider net death match. In this match, Kasai and Numazawa, they would end up picking up the ladder and charging at Miyamoto, with Miyamoto ducking it, and both Miyamoto and Kodaka, they would deliver a drop kick to the ladder, sending both Kasai and Numazawa outside the ring, with both Miyamoto and Kodaka diving onto the outside on them. Miyamoto and Kodaka would then take Kasai and Numazawa into separate parts of the ring apron and try to slam them both into the spider nets, but Kasai and Numazawa would both gain control and slam Miyamoto and Kodaka into the spider nets instead. Numazawa would then take some of the barbed wire from the spider net and begin using it to cut open Miyamoto, while Kasai would work on Kodaka and bloody him up and try to send him into the iron cage with light tubes in it, but Kodaka would reverse it and send Kasai towards it, it, with Kasai stopping short of the cage before Kodaka would end up just shoving Kasai into the cage with the light tubes breaking across Kasai's back. Kodaka would then end up hitting a Hurricane Rana off the top, sending Kasai onto the ladder, and then going for a running knee drop off the top with a chair, but Kasai would move out of the way and hit Kodaka with a lariat. Kasai would then end up hitting a reverse Tiger Driver on the ladder and then hitting a Pearl Harbor Splash off the ladder with Miyamoto kicking out. Kasai would then end up climbing up the top of the iron cage, but both Miyamoto and Kodaka would end up climbing it up as well and hitting a double suplex off the top of the cage on Kasai. Miyamoto and Kodaka would then end up hitting a double powerbomb on Numazawa, with Kodaka coming off the ladder with a double knee drop and Miyamoto hitting a moonsault off the top of the iron cage, with Kasai having to make the save for Numazawa. Miyamoto would then end up picking up Numazawa and trying for a Fire Thunder, but Kasai would make the save and grab Miyamoto and then try for a reverse Tiger Driver, with Kodaka going after Kasai's knees and then throwing Kasai in the iron cage with him, so he shut the iron cage door, leaving Miyamoto and Numazawa to go at it one-on-one, with Miyamoto picking up Numazawa and hitting him with the Fire Thunder for the win to become the Big Japan Tag Team Champions in a really awesome match. Definitely recommend, again, I've talked about in the past, Miyamoto, Kodaka, the youth movement with Big Japan. These matches aren't at the level of 2000 where they were all really trying to make their names in Big Japan. At this point, they've made their names, they're established, but they're still having awesome matches. They're just not at the top of the line amazing matches that they were doing in 2009. And then the main event's going to be Ryuji Ito defending the Big Japan Deathmatch title against Takashi Sasaki in a fluorescent light tubes concrete blocks deathmatch. This is a rematch of their famous 2005 match that put Takashi Sasaki on the map as a top-tier deathmatch worker. They would start off by taking light tubes and just smashing them over each other's heads before taking turns sending one another into the ropes with the light tubes tied to the ropes. Sasaki would eventually roll out of the ring, with Ito climbing up to the top rope and delivering a dive onto Sasaki outside the ring. Ito would eventually bring Sasaki back in the ring, where he would take a light tube and place it on Sasaki's back and smash it with a concrete block. Ito would then try to hit a Hurricane Rana on Sasaki on stacks upon stacks of light tubes, but Sasaki would manage to get under Ito and hit a power bomb on him, sending Ito through multiple light tubes. Sasaki would then end up hitting a D-Jice on Ito on the concrete blocks, with Ito trying to get up and use a concrete block, but he would end up falling down, allowing Sasaki to try and deliver a kick to the head, with Ito blocking it by putting up a concrete block just in the nick of time, so Sasaki would end up kicking the concrete block instead. Ito would then end up putting a stack of light tubes over Sasaki and hitting a dragon splash on him, with Sasaki still managing to kick out. Sasaki would have one last shot at putting Ito away by delivering a right kick to the light tubes, breaking them across Ito's head, and then slamming Ito onto the light tubes over the concrete blocks, but Ito would still manage to kick out. Sasaki would then try to hit a D-Jice off the turnbuckle onto the concrete blocks, but Ito would manage to turn it into a Hurricane Rana, sending Sasaki onto the concrete blocks, and then Ito would end up hitting a Falcon Arrow on a huge stack of light tubes, and then place the broken light tubes over Sasaki and hit a Dragon Splash on them, with Sasaki still managing to kick out at 2. Ito would then pull out from under the ring a stack of light tubes set to look like concrete blocks and place them over Sasaki and hit a Dragon Splash, breaking the light tubes over Sasaki for the win. This would be the end of the Ryuji Ito Takashi Sasaki feud 6 years later. Sasaki would be pushed down the card in Big Japan due to being a freedoms wrestler. I don't think Big Japan really had any plans for Takashi Sasaki as far as a top guy any longer anyway, but Sasaki's just going to be a mid-card worker while running freedoms here for the next couple years for Big Japan.
The Apache Army would have 2 titles being defended on May 27th at Shinkiba. Can you go over these matches?
Yeah, so at this point, Kanemaru knows that he's nowhere near the level of being able to have a great match like Obata and Hiroki possibly could have for the WWE tag titles. So Kanemaru and Arashi, they have a match for the WWE title, with Kanemaru defending it in the semi-main event. In this match, Kanemaru, he would end up going after Arashi right away, and they would end up fighting in the crowd, with Kanemaru coming back in the ring bleeding. Eventually, Kanemaru would try to roll up Arashi a couple times, but Arashi Arashi would kick out each time, and eventually this would end up just being a total squash, as Arashi would end up just destroying Kanemaru until hitting him with a lariat for the win. So Arashi has now won the WWE title, so, all those years of the WWE title pretty much being dormant for Kanemaru to finally get the big win, and he ends up losing it after 3 months in his first defense. But, the whole point of these titles really is for the chase and not for the capture. And, Kanemaru, it's a great story when he wins it, but there really isn't too much for him to do with the title after he's won it, especially in his condition. He's not in his prime anymore. He's not at, the level of being able to have a great match, especially for a small promotion like the Apache Army at a small building like the Shinkiba First Ring. Afterwards, Koshihiro Kimura, who had worked the early days of FMW, like 1990 for a little bit before working Wing. That's probably where he's best known for. And, at this point, that's, 17, 18 years ago at this point. He also had worked under a mask as Super Uchu Power in the DDT about 10 years prior to this. So he's appearing, and he's going to challenge Arashi to a WWE title match at the next show. So again, it's just kind of, the whole point of the WWE title, as well as the WWE tag titles, is really more for the chase. Who's going to challenge for it next? The main event is going to be Kohei Sato and Kamikaze once again defending the WWE tag titles against Yusaku Obata and Hiroki. Kamikaze and Sato, they would focus on Obata, giving him a double kick to the head, and then Sato would end up hitting Obata with a pile driver, and then eventually putting Obata away with a German suplex for the win. So this match really, there was nothing really stood out for it as well, even though Hiroki and Obata are really good, talented workers. This match, I would say, is, kind of fell flat overall, but like I said, at this point, the WWE tag titles, they're Sato and Kamikaze, the whole point of them, it's really kind of the chase. Who's going to be able to dethrone these guys? They've held them for 2 years. Who can finally beat them? Afterwards, Pachi Kosaka, who is a independent wrestler working mid-card matches for the Apache Army at this point, he would come to the ring and ask to team up with Yusaku Obata to challenge Sato and Kamikaze for the tag titles at the next show. So again, they're kind of just seeing what they can do to have a fresh new match for each monthly show. And so it's pretty much, next show is going to be a rematch other than Apache Kosaka taking the place of Hiroki here.
Freedoms would run Shinkiba on June 22nd. Can you talk about the top matches that took place?
Yeah, so this show would announce a crowd of 152 fans. So again, just kind of what each Shinkiba show is doing at this point, with no death match as the main event. But on this show, Jun Kasai, he would end up teaming up with Hiroki in the semi-main event, and they're going to take on Mama Sasaki and Riki Fuji. They would end up brawling all around ringside, and Mammoth would end up taking Kasai up the bleachers and throwing a trash can at him. Mammoth and Kasai, they would end up meeting in the ring with both of them bloody, as Kasai would end up knocking Mammoth down with a lariat, and then Kasai would end up hitting a Pearl Harbor splash, but Mammoth would get up right away and hit the 29 years old on Kasai. They would both end up getting up at the same time, with Kasai hitting a German suplex, and then Mammoth would get up right away and hit a lariat on Kasai, and then Mammoth would end up picking up Kasai and hitting the 29 years old for the win. So Mammoth and Riki get the win over Kasai and Hiroki. This really was just kind of get Mammoth a win over Kasai. Mammoth, he has the seniority over Kasai, but at this point, Kasai is the bigger star. He's more popular, and so it's really just kind of to build up to one day that Kasai is going to get the pinfall over Mammoth. Just kind of having Mammoth beat Kasai in the meantime, for Kasai to finally get the one-on-one victory over Mammoth, which will come one day. And then the main event's going to be Jintaro taking on Takao Omori. There really wasn't anything special to this match. Omori would end up putting away Jintaro with a lariat, but afterwards, Jintaro and Omori, they would shake hands with the Gojika Army coming out afterwards, and Gojika would be really upset that Jintaro is showing respect to a non-Gojika Army member, and so Gojika would end up kicking Jintaro out of the Gojika Army. Jintaro doesn't really act like he cares here too much. Jintaro and Omori, they're going to become a tag team, and they're going to go up against the Kajika Army here for the next couple months, as the notoriety of this Kajika Army group is fastly fading.
Tragedy would take place prior to the Apache Army June 23rd show at Shinkiba for Ricky Maru. What happened to him, and what happened during the show?
So I mentioned earlier in the episode how Rikimaru, at the age of 38, had made his debut for the Apache Army earlier in the year, and so Rikimaru is still training to, be a wrestler. Kanemaru is helping him train every so often, especially before a show. He's, in the ring working with him, and so before this show, Kanemaru goes, "Hey, we're going to train, a couple hours before the show starts. We're going to use the ring in the Shinkiba, and we're going to, I'm going to teach you something, help teach you." And so they're training and doing some mat work in the ring, and all of a sudden Rikimaru passes out. Well, Kanemaru freaks out. Just a couple seconds ago, here he is, working with them in the ring, and now he's unconscious. So Kanemaru goes outside of the Shinkiba first ring and begins shouting for help. Someone, please call 911. Rikimaru's fiance is actually outside Shinkiba at the time, talking with some of the people having to do with the promotion, just waiting for her fiance to finish up with the training. And, here's Kanemaru screaming, we need help, we need help. Rikimaru is passed out, he's unconscious. So they call 911, and they would rush Rikimaru to the hospital where they would perform a emergency surgery that would last 5 hours. And afterwards, the doctors would tell Rikimaru's fiance that the surgery was a success, but he is still unconscious. They would tell her that pretty much he was diagnosed with an acute subdermal hematoma, which essentially is the veins in his brain were stretched apart and torn apart. And pretty much as a result of his brain getting shook around. So, like I said, Rikimaru is 38. He's only been in the business for a couple months. He hadn't really done too much wrestling, and the little bit of wrestling he had done was the most, basic wrestling maneuvers, not like he had ever taken a chair shot to the head or anything like that. So, I don't know if this was necessarily from, what he had done in his previous life before getting into the wrestling business earlier in the year, or if it was just simply based off the very limited amount of wrestling that he had done, the training or the couple matches he's had. So this is not looking good for Rikimaru, but his friends and family are still hoping and praying that he's going to wake up, but eventually Rikimaru would end up passing away 19 days after the surgery on July 13th in the early morning due to the acute subdermal hematoma. A really tragic story, really. Like I said, he just had gotten started in the business earlier in the year, and here we are, after a very limited amount, only a couple matches, he ends up passing away, sadly. In a way, it was kind of ironic, also that Kanemaru was in the ring with him while he passed away due to this brain injury, with Kanemaru having suffered something very similar a couple years earlier when Mirko Krokov kicked him in the head, and Kanemaru's brain shook essentially, and that's what happened with Rikimaru. So again, a really sad incident. The Apache Army would continue to give a tribute to Rikimaru, after his passing, as well as 1 year after his passing as well. So Rikimaru is not really remembered very much in pro wrestling because he had barely done anything, but regardless, it was a very sad and tragic story with his life. So with all that said, Kanemaru would then go on to team up with Kuroda and Tomohiko Hashimoto, and they're going to go up against Kazushi Miyamoto, Daisaku Shimoda, and Hiroki. In this match, Miyamoto and Hashimoto, they would collide into one another, with Miyamoto badly injuring his knee and having to roll out of the ring and would be out of the match the rest of the time. Hiroki and Shimoda, they would end up having to go 2-on-3 against the Apache guys, with Hiroki knocking Kanemaru out of the ring and hitting an Asai moonsault onto him. Hashimoto would end up grabbing a hold of Shimoda as Kuroda would do his running lariat across the building on Hiroki. Kuroda would then end up grabbing a hold of Shimoda as Hashimoto would charge with the lariat, but Shimoda would move out of the way as Hashimoto would accidentally end up hitting Kuroda. Kanemaru and Hiroki, they would then face off, with Hiroki nailing Kanemaru with a trans-rave kick and then a moonsault for the win. So Hiroki gets the big win over Kanemaru. Kanemaru's putting over the younger guys here. He knows he has value to his name, and putting over the younger wrestlers like Hiroki that can really go help the promotion out, establish them as main eventers for future shows. And then Arashi would defend the WEW title against Koshihira Kimura. I mentioned, he's former wing wrestler. This match would end up going about 6 minutes before Arashi would end up hitting a backdrop and then finishing Kimura off with a powerbomb for the win to defend the title. I don't think I'm going to talk about Kimura anymore after this. Sadly, he would actually end up passing away in 2014 due to pneumonia. He'd wrestle a couple more years before falling ill and, like I said, sadly passing away. The main event's going to be Kohei Sato and Kamikaze defending the WEW tag titles against Yusaku Obata and Apache Kosake. Sato would begin laying kicks to Obata, but Obata would come back with a drop kick, and as Obata would tag in Kosake, they would deliver a double drop kick to Sato. Kosake would then deliver a German suplex, but Sato would manage to kick out, and with Kamikaze coming over, Kamikaze and Sato would then deliver a double kick to the head of Kosake, followed by Sato hitting a Falcon Arrow and then finishing Kosake off with a pile driver for the win. So Sato and Kamikaze once again defend the WEW tag titles, and afterwards Kanemaru and Kuroda, they would come to the ring and challenge for the WEW tag titles with a match being made for August.
Big Japan would have a very successful show at Korakuen Hall on June 27th. Why did this show do so well, and what were some of the noteworthy matches that took place?
Yeah, so I was actually at this show live, and they would announce a crowd of 1,921 fans, which would actually be the biggest Big Japan Korakuen Hall show since the Ryuji Ito Jun Kasai singles match in 2009. And actually, Big Japan hasn't announced a crowd bigger than this 1,921 fans since this show back in 2011. And like I said, I was there. Awesome atmosphere, especially for the main event. I wouldn't say it was a definite sellout, as I kind of remember there were some empty seats, and it wasn't like an overwhelming amount of fans there, like take the Atsushi Onita 2017 retirement show where that building was packed with people. This show definitely didn't reach that, but it was a pretty filled up building for this show. The draw of the show was Ryuji Ito defending the Big Japan Deathmatch title against Kenkaro Hoshino. I'll go over kind of why that drew here in a second. Another notable match on this show was Jun Kasai, Masashi Takeda, and Jackie Numazawa. They're going to take on Takashi Sasaki, Shadow WX, and Masato Inaba. Inaba was a independent wrestler. He was actually a big-time FMW fan growing up, so he wanted to get into the death matches, and so he would begin wrestling in Big Japan here around this time period. He would have just got his start. In this match, they would end up brawling all around ringside, with Kasai putting Takashi Sasaki in a push cart and rolling Sasaki into the turnbuckle. Takeda would end up getting Inaba in the ring and smash a chair over his head. Numazawa would then end up tying up Inaba using a chair and then delivering a dropkick to him, and then Kasai would smash him over the head with the chair, and then Takeda would then dropkick the barbed wire board into Inaba and then wrap the barbed wire around Inaba's forehead. So this is kind of Inaba really paying his dues. You want to be a deathmatch worker? Well, then you're going to go through this first. Numazawa would then end up hitting Inaba with the Death Valley Bomb into the other barbed wire board, and then they would place the broken barbed wire board over Inaba and begin smashing it over Inaba's body with chairs. Inaba would fight back some by picking up Takeda and hitting a fireman's carry onto the barbed wire board and then placing it over Takeda's body, but as he would go up to the top, he would be met with a flying chair thrown by Kasai, and then Takeda would suplex Inaba off the top into the barbed wire board, and then Takeda would place the barbed wire board over Inaba's body and hit a running kick followed by a Olympic slam onto the barbed wire board for the win. So like I said, they really just kind of destroyed Inaba here. You got to pay your dues if you want to be a deathmatch worker. Inaba would continue to work for Big Japan, but on this day, he was a sacrificial lamb to Kasai, Takeda, and Numazawa, who just pretty much destroyed him. Then the main event is Ryuji Ito defending the Big Japan Deathmatch title against Kenkaro Hoshino in a fluorescent light tubes twin tower weapons deathmatch. And like I said, the whole reason this show really was a big draw was because Kenkaro Hoshino was kind of a nobody going into this match. He'd always been either undercard or midcard for the last couple years in Big Japan. And the draw here was, hey, remember Takashi Sasaki and Yuko Miyamoto from 2007, where Miyamoto was kind of this undercard nobody, and then he had this main event deathmatch title match, and he really made himself become a star in that on that show? Well, hey, Hoshino's going to do the same here. They're promoting that as, hey, this is Hoshino's big break. He's going to become a star after having this match. And so the fans, knowing, hey, that Miyamoto match was awesome 4 years ago. I want to see something similar. I want to be there live when this match happens. And so that's why this show was such a draw compared to every Big Japan show that's happened since then in the last 8 years plus. So Hoshino, he would show off that he was ready by breaking several light tubes over his head, with Ito responding by dumping a bucket of thumbtacks over his head. They would start by going out to the outside early on, with Hoshino throwing Ito into a stack of chairs. They would end up getting back in the ring and taking turns slamming one another into the thumbtacks. Ito would end up putting thumbtacks in Hoshino's mouth and then punching him in the face with thumbtacks flying out of his mouth. Hoshino would then end up coming back and sending Ito in towards the light tube tower, with Ito stopping himself short, but Hoshino would come and rush right into Ito, smashing him into the light tube tower. Hoshino would then take a chair with barbed wire and light tubes attached to it and throw Ito down onto it, and then chokeslam Ito into a stack of light tubes. Ito would come back and kick a stack of light tubes over Hoshino's head, followed by a moonsault by Ito. Ito would then end up pulling out a syringe, with Hoshino grabbing it from him, and then in one of the sickest spots you'll see, and this was kind of the introduction to the syringe spot in Japan, so being there live, I was not ready to see this spot, having never seen it before live. It had been done in America, and that's where they got this spot, but I had not seen this spot before, and it freaked people out as Hoshino would end up putting the syringe through Ito's mouth as liquid would begin pouring out of Ito's cheek. So again, this was like, whoa, I didn't know this was a thing. I was not ready for this. Ito would end up pulling out the syringe and stabbing Hoshino in the head with it, and then suplexing Hoshino on a stack of chairs stacked sideways. Ito would then place the other light tube tower on a stack of chairs over Hoshino's body and climb up to the top, but Hoshino would get up and suplex Ito off the top through the light tube tower, and then Hoshino would powerbomb Ito onto a stack of light tubes, followed by a chokeslam on another stack of light tubes. Hoshino would then place the ring stairs over Ito's body and hit a senton splash onto them, and then do it again, this time off the top rope, as the fans are passionately cheering for Hoshino here at this point, but Ito would still manage to kick out. Ito would then come back and place a stack of light tubes over Hoshino and hit a dragon splash onto him, and then pull out the light tubes designed to look like a concrete block that was placed under the ring and put it over Hoshino's body, as Ito would then hit another dragon splash, breaking the light tubes over Hoshino for the win. So after this match, Hoshino definitely could have been a star. This definitely could have been a star-making match like Miyamoto, but Big Japan really never saw the potential in Hoshino like they did Miyamoto. So Hoshino never really became the star that Miyamoto would be, a regular star. 5 years later, Hoshino would get a Sumo Hall main event against Ito in kind of a rematch of this specific match, where they would do a lot of the spots, including the syringe and all that. So this match is definitely remembered in Big Japan history. But like I said, it definitely wasn't, and it wasn't at the level of the Miyamoto scaffold match in 2007 either. It's still a really good match, but like I said, Big Japan never really had the plans for Hoshino to be like a top guy or anything like that, especially compared to Miyamoto, who's a really good worker. Hoshino is just kind of a average to good worker that's willing to do really sick spots, essentially, and he's capable of having a great match, but day to day, he's nowhere near what Miyamoto was. But like I said, overall, this match was a really good match, and it was a definite draw. Like I said, no Korakuen Hall show has drawn better for Big Japan since this show in the last 8 years.
Freedoms would have another Shinkiba show on July 26th, getting ready for the deathmatch tournament. What took place here?
Yeah, they would announce a crowd of 158 fans for this show, so just the same loyal Freedom's fan base that attends every Shinkiba show when there's no death match in the main event. On this show, Takawa Morai and Jintaro team up to take on the Great Kajika, Abdullah Kobayashi, and Ken Oka, so the Kajika Army, in a handicap match. This match would have a lot of brawling around ringside. It would mostly be a goofy comedy match, with Oka trying to hit Morai with a cane, but he would end up accidentally hitting Kojika instead with it. And then Kobayashi would try to hit Morai, but he would end up accidentally hitting hitting Kojika as well, before Amore would end up just rolling Kojika up for the win. So Amore and Shintaro get the win over the Kojika army, and then afterwards the great Kojika would be really upset over everything that had just happened, and he would end up firing Abdullah Kobayashi and the Brahmin brothers from the Kojika army, even though the Brahmin brothers weren't even in the match. This would upset both the Brahmin brothers and Kobayashi, and they would begin going after Kojika, Antonio Honda, and Ken Oka, the remaining members of the Kojika army. So this was pretty much just a reason for Abdullah Kobayashi to leave Freedoms. Like I said, Freedoms likes to use wrestlers up to a certain point, then it's okay, we're gonna move on. Kobayashi has his home with Big Japan, he's fine, but they're gonna try and bring in new people and kind of phase some of the old, outsiders that have been with the promotion for the past year out. The Brahmin brothers, though, they're just breaking them up from the group, just so that they can be separated and not have anything to do with Kojika, as the Kojika army is again kind of they're phasing it out. It's no longer the top heel group or anything like that. It's just kind of a semi-main event or mid-card comedy gimmick at this point. Then the main event is going to be Takashi Sasaki, Mama Sasaki, and Masashi Takeda taking on Jun Kasai, Kamui, and the Winger in a 2 out of 3 falls match. These 6 guys are going to be in the deathmatch tournament next month, so it's kind of to just get ready for the tournament and a preview of it. They would start out by brawling all around ringside, with Kamui just tossing a chair at Takashi Sasaki's head. They would end up getting back in the ring with Mammoth placing a chair over the bloody Kasai's throat, before Kamui would end up coming in and throwing a chair at Mammoth and then hitting a flying dropkick at the chair. Kamui would then climb up to the top rope, with Mammoth just tossing the chair at Kamui's head and then picking Kamui up on the ramp and delivering a powerbomb, sending Kamui back into the ring, and follow that up with a Mammoth home run and then a 29 years old for the fall. So Mammoth, Takashi, and Takeda get the first fall in this match. The second fall would see Mammoth try to suplex the Winger, but the Winger would end up kicking him low. Then Takashi Sasaki would grab a hold of the Winger, and when Mammoth would charge at the Winger, he would move out of the way, causing Mammoth to hit Takashi Sasaki, and the Winger would roll up Mammoth to tie the match 1-1. So going to go into the final fall, and the final fall would see Takashi Sasaki and Kamui alone in the ring, with Takashi delivering a clothesline to Kamui and then going for the D-Jice, but Kamui would manage to escape and hit a Pele kick to Takashi, follow that up, rolling Takashi Sasaki up with a Kamui clutch for the win. So Kamui gets the big win for for his team. So this is a big signature win for Kamui to go into the deathmatch tournament to show, hey, Kamui has a chance. Look, he just beat one of the top guys in Freedoms, even though obviously Kamui never really has a shot to win anything big in Freedoms.
The WEW Tag Team titles would be on the line again on August 18th at the Apache Army Shinkiba show. Can you go over what took place?
Yeah, so Kohei Sato and Kamikaze are once again defending the WEW tag titles in the main event, this time against Kanemaru and Kuroda. In this match, Sato would take Kuroda up into the crowd and cut him up, so Kuroda is now bleeding as they get back in the ring. Kamikaze would focus on Kuroda and just kind of beat him up pretty much until Kuroda would make the hot tag to Kanemaru, and then Kanemaru would come in and fight with Kamikaze until making the tag back to Kuroda. Kamikaze would end up getting behind Kuroda and try to suplex him, but Kanemaru would end up coming over and delivering a roundhouse kick to the back of Kamikaze, allowing Kuroda to roll up Kamikaze with the Samson clutch for the win. So Kanemaru and Kuroda have won the WEW tag titles, ending the near 2-year reign of Sato and Kamikaze with the belts. But again, most of the, over a year of it was just the titles were dormant. But again, this is Kanemaru's, and just kind of the booking logic is the big, the top guy ends up getting the win in the big moment, but there's really no need for them to have the belts, like for our actual run with them. It's just to have the moment of finally winning them and, the chase and finally getting them off of Sato and Kamikaze. So after Kanemaru and Kuroda, they celebrate, they would end up calling out Hiroki and Yusaku Obata, and they would announce that they're going to be the next challengers for the belts at the next show. So again, it's really there just to have Kanemaru and Kuroda, get the big win, but they're not going to keep these belts for very long.
Jun Kasai would promote his annual deathmatch tournament on August 24th and 25th in Shinkiba. Can you tell us what happened on these 2 shows?
Yeah, so they would announce a crowd of 312 fans for this show, so about double of what the typical Freedom Shinkiba show with no deathmatch was doing. So it's obvious that, again, that the Junkasai Deathmatch Tournament is definitely a draw, especially compared to just a normal Freedom show. This show would have 4 first-round matches, and then the next show the next day would be the semifinals and finals. The first-round match would be Masashi Takeda taking on the Winger in a lethal weapon ladder death match. Takeda would end up throwing the Winger into the ladder, with the Winger going to the outside to escape Takeda, who would end up going after him and taking him up the bleachers before eventually taking him back in the ring and just smashing him over the head with a board of thumbtacks, and then placing the Winger on a table on the outside as Takeda would climb up the ladder and dive off of it, sending the Winger through the table with the table kind of breaking. Takeda would then bring the Winger back in the ring and deliver a German suplex with the Winger kicking out, and then Takeda would try for a clothesline, but the Winger would catch his arm and inside cradle him for the win. So even though Takeda had controlled almost the entire match, it would be the Winger going away with the win and advancing. The next match would be Takashi Sasaki taking on Kamui in a Steel of Pain street fight death match. Kamui would jump Sasaki with a dropkick right away, sending him to the outside, and then Kamui would go up the bleachers and deliver a moonsault onto Sasaki. They would make it back in the ring, where Kamui would grab a chain and tie Sasaki up to a metal object before knocking him down. Kamui would then wrap a chain around Takashi Sasaki's neck and throw him over the top, but Sasaki would fight back and charge at Kamui with a lariat, but Kamui would roll Sasaki up with the Kamui clutch that he had won the month prior, but Sasaki would manage to kick out this time. Kamui would then end up hitting a swanton, but Sasaki would kick out again, and then Kamui would then try for a moonsault, but Sasaki would move a metal can in the way, with Kamui landing on it instead, and then Sasaki would powerbomb Kamui onto it, and then place Kamui inside the metal can, as Sasaki would deliver a kick to it, but injure his foot as a result, before putting Kamui away with the Michinoku Driver 2 on 2 steel cans for the win. So Takashi Sasaki also advances in the tournament. And then Mama Sasaki would take on Kinji Fukumoto, who is a FUCK wrestler, a very, very low independent death match that was on its last legs at this time. In this match, Fukumoto, he would end up grabbing the barbed wire bat first, but Mammoth would end up kicking him and grabbing the bat from him before Fukumoto would end up kicking Mammoth low. Fukumoto would end up making the mistake of going up to the top, with Mammoth getting up and throwing Fukumoto off the top and then picking up the bat and finally using it on him. And then Mammoth would end up placing a chair over Fukumoto's head, and as he was going for the Mammoth home run, Fukumoto would end up spraying green mist in Mammoth's face. Fukumoto would then try for a backslide on Mammoth, but Mammoth would eventually end up just nailing Fukumoto with the clothesline, and then successfully hitting the Mammoth home run, and then finishing Fukumoto off with the 29 years old for the win. So now Mammoth has also advanced in the tournament. And then the main event of the show is going to be Junkasai taking on Masada in a fluorescent light tubes death match. So now a rematch of the finals of last year will be a first round match between Junkasai and Masada, as Kasai tries to finally defeat Masada after losing to him last year. They would start off hitting each other over the head with light tubes before shoving one another into the light tubes on the side of the ring. Masada would end up pulling out his skewers, but Kasai would end up grabbing them from him and begin stabbing them in Masada's head this time. Masada would come back by knocking Kasai in the corner by kicking a light tube right in Kasai's head, and then Masada would end up suplexing Kasai right onto a stack of light tubes, but Kasai would get up right away and nail Masada with several lariats before placing a stack of light tubes and hitting a Pearl Harbor splash, breaking the light tubes over Masada. But Masada would still kick out at 2, with Kasai giving a great reaction of disbelief that Masada was able to kick out, like, what do I have to do to beat this guy? Kasai would then try for a reverse Tiger Driver on a stack of light tubes, but Masada would reverse it and hit a reverse Tiger Driver on the stack of light tubes himself instead, and then they would begin exchanging lariats with one another, with Kasai finally knocking Masada down. Kasai would then grab a light tube and break it and begin cutting his chest with it, but as he's doing that, Masada would come over from behind and deliver a suplex, followed by a Death Valley bomb, with Kasai kicking out at 1. Masada would then stick the skewers in Kasai's back and forehead and deliver the Skullfucker Buster for the win. So Masada once again has defeated Jun Kasai in the deathmatch tournament. Afterwards, Kenji Fukimoto would come to the ring and begin mocking Kasai for losing, as he would call out his friend, the American Psycho, to hit the ring, and they would both begin attacking Kasai, with Fukimoto hitting a light tube over Kasai's back, when Masashi Takeda would hit the ring and clear it of both of them, as a tag team match is announced for the next day, with Kasai and Takeda taking on Fukimoto and the American Psycho. And then the following day, on August 25th, they would announce a crowd of 368 fans, another great number, sellout crowd, but it actually wasn't as good as what they had done last year, although, again, still another great number in comparison to what they have been doing, what they've been doing under just the Freedom's name. The first semifinals match is going to be Mammoth Sasaki taking on Masada in a barbed wire board death match. The match would start with Mammoth clotheslining Masada out of the ring and then picking up the barbed wire board and just tossing it out of the ring at Masada. Mammoth would then take a barbed wire bat and begin cutting open Masada with it. They would then end up fighting up the bleachers in the crowd, with Masada grabbing the barbed wire bat from Mammoth, and he would use it to cut open Mammoth with it. Eventually, Mammoth would fight back by tossing the barbed wire board at Masada, with some of the barbed wire from the barbed wire board getting caught up in Masada. Mammoth would then begin throwing chairs in the ring and stack up the barbed wire board onto them, as he would take Masada to the ramp of Shinkiba and deliver a power bomb off the entrance ramp, sending Masada into the ring through the barbed wire board. And then Mammoth would try to send Masada into the other barbed wire board, but Masada would manage to reverse it and send Mammoth through it instead, and then follow that up with hitting a power bomb on Mammoth. Masada would then toss the barbed wire board over Mammoth and hit a moonsault onto him, and then Masada would end up climbing up to the top, but Mammoth would get up and suplex Masada, sending Masada into the barbed wire, and then hit a Mammoth home run, but Masada would still manage to kick out. They would begin exchanging lariats, with Masada getting the better end of it, and then hitting the Skullfucker Buster on Mammoth, and then begin sticking skewers in Mammoth's head and placing a chair around his neck, as he would end up placing an STF on Mammoth, with the referee having to force to stop the match to give Masada the win. So they keep Mammoth strong here, but Masada continues to advance here, beating all the Freedom's wrestlers, and now he's in the finals of the tournament. The other semifinals match would be a thumbtacks death match between Takashi Sasaki and the Winger, which would get started with the Winger just throwing thumbtacks in Takashi Sasaki's face. The Winger would then try to suplex Sasaki, but Sasaki would grab the bucket of thumbtacks and just dump them over the Winger's head. Takashi would then try to slam the Winger into the thumbtacks, but he would end up falling into them instead. The Winger would then try to climb up to the top looking for a senton, but Sasaki would throw some of the thumbtacks at the Winger and then climb up the top as well, but the Winger would end up knocking Sasaki off the top, and then as the Winger is going for a senton, he would end up missing it and falling into the thumbtacks. Sasaki would then lay the Winger out with a kick to the head and then a powerbomb onto the thumbtacks. Sasaki would then go for another kick, but the Winger would roll him up and then hit Sasaki low, and then take one of Sasaki's boots off and drop Sasaki's barefoot into the thumbtacks, with Sasaki screaming in pain. Eventually Sasaki would fight back and kick the Winger in the head with his bare foot, and then Sasaki would pick up the Winger for a D-Jice, but the Winger would roll up Sasaki for the win, so the Winger gets his second straight roll-up victory to advance to the finals of the tournament. And then the semi-main event would be a non-tournament match between Jun Kasai and Masashi Takeda taking on Kenji Fukimoto and the American Psycho in a street fight death match. Kasai and Fukimoto, they would start off with Kasai fighting Fukimoto up the bleachers, while Takeda and Psycho, they would fight on the ramp of Shinkiba, with Psycho picking up and dropping Takeda on a light tube, and then using the glass to cut open Takeda. Eventually, they would end up getting in the ring with Psycho, putting another light tube down on the mat, but this time Takeda would pick him up and slam him through it instead. Takeda would end up tagging in Kasai, who would try for a reverse Tiger Driver, but Fukimoto would spit green mist in his face, and then Fukimoto would hit Kasai with a Shining Wizard, followed by grabbing Kasai's goggles and hitting a really weak-looking Pearl Harbor splash that would do nothing to Kasai. Fukimoto would then grab a stack of light tubes and smash them over Kasai's head, and then pull out a board of razor blades and throw Kasai into it, with the crowd passionately booing Fukimoto here. Kasai would then come back and poorly suplex Fukimoto onto the razor board and then place a stack of light tubes over Fukimoto, but American Psycho would pick them up and try to hit Kasai over the head with them, with Takeda making the save, and he would end up kneeing them into Psycho. Takeda would then place the razor board over Fukimoto as Kasai would hit the Pearl Harbor splash on it to get the win over Fukimoto in a very heated match. It is amazing how much they hate Fukimoto here. He is definitely the most hated wrestler in Freedom's history at this point. They do not respect him. They do not like him. He's from a rival deathmatch promotion. It is a perfect mix right here of, Fukimoto by no means is a good wrestler at this point, but he's willing to take a lot of pain. He's willing to take a lot of punishment, and he is definitely over with the fans hating him. And then the main event's going to be a glass board death match between Masada and the Winger for the finals of the deathmatch tournament. Masada would grab the Winger early on and hit a reverse DDT through the first glass board, sending Winger through it. Then Masada would take a staple gun and begin stapling the Winger's back and then smash him over the back with the chair. Masada would then take the Winger on the ramp and hit a Death Valley bomb through the timekeeper's table. And then Masada would end up setting up the other glass board on a set of chairs and go up to the top and pick up the Winger and deliver a Death Valley bomb off the top through the other glass board, with the Winger still managing to kick out. Masada would then place the Winger on top of the broken timekeeper's table and would go up to the top for an elbow drop, but the Winger would manage to move out of the way, with the Winger rolling up Masada, but Masada would kick out and then pick up the Winger and try for another Death Valley bomb, but the Winger would once again escape to roll up Masada, and this time he would end up getting the win over Masada to win the deathmatch tournament, as the Winger would celebrate so hard he would fall over the top rope to the outside. Afterwards, all the wrestlers would come to the ring, and the Winger would end up being presented with the deathmatch tournament trophy, as the Winger would end up lifting up the trophy to end the show. So Masada has finally been defeated in the deathmatch tournament. The Winger has won his second deathmatch tournament, and each time is pretty much the Winger just getting destroyed each match and then just rolling up his opponent for the victory. They keep Masada strong here. He defeated Kasai. Kasai still wants to one day beat Masada, but they didn't want to have Masada repeat as champion, and so they ended up having the Winger win the deathmatch tournament again for the second time.
Nanjyo Hayato would create a new FMW-based promotion called FFF and would run his first show on August 27th in Osaka. What did FFF stand for, and can you go over everything that took place and how it did?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier how Nanjyo Hayato was kind of having this FMW nostalgic feeling after leaving Osaka Pro, and Nanjyo had ran this successful show with Onita going up against him, and Nanjyo feels like, hey, I can run a full-on promotion based off this FMW nostalgia with me on top. And so Nanjyo creates a promotion called F-Spirit Fantasy Fighters, FFF, and the promotion is really kind of be based around FMW and the old FMW wrestlers. And like I said, Nanjo's going to be one of the top guys for the promotion, but he's going to really try and see if this can work, to see if FMW in 2011, without the name being used, can still draw. And so he promotes this show in Osaka in an 1,800-seat building. So he brings in a bunch of the old FMW wrestlers: Onita, Kanamura, Mama Sasaki, Riki Fuji, Flying Kid Ichihara, as well as Hayabusa and Megumi Kudo, who are obviously not going to wrestle, and as well as some Osaka-based wrestlers and the great Sasuke on top of that. And so Nanjyo really goes all out to try and get this show over. It's going to be held at the 1,800-seat Osaka Prefectural Gym. He goes all out promoting it. He's on TV. He's going all over to restaurants, putting the posters up. So Nanjyo really tries to get this off the ground and to make this a successful show. You can't fault him for, one person going all out, because he really wanted this to succeed. He announced that if this show succeeds, I'm going to keep, doing more shows like this. I'm going to keep promoting under the FMW nostalgia with this promotion. And he announces that if this show does well, he's going to continue to promote, the FMW wrestlers. And hey, if this does well, let's see, this could be the new FMW under a different name. But if this show doesn't do well, then I'm going to kind of need to not, either tinker with some things or, just drop it all together because FMW is not a draw. Well, sadly, this show would only draw an announced crowd of 599 fans, so almost 600, which would be about exactly 1/3 the size of the building. So this show was not a success. They did sell out the front row, which was a good thing, but, overall, this was not a financial success for Nanjyo, which, again, was a big disappointment considering he really went all out, and for it to not work out was a big disappointment. This would actually be the first time that Hayabusa and Onita were on the same show since Onita was forced out of FMW going back to November 1998. They did not really interact with each other too much. They did take a group photo with Nanjyo, Megumi Kudo, and Mama Sasaki, so they did see each other, but they didn't talk to one another as, there's still hard feelings between the two after everything that happened when Onita decided to come back in 1996 and try and take back his spot as the ace in FMW. And then some of the undercard matches on this show, Mama Sasaki, he teams up with Osaka-based wrestler Kinjo Takai. They defeat the local wrestlers Yutaka and Michio Kajiyama when Mammoth would end up hitting Kajiyama with the lariat and then finishing him off at the 29 years old. And then there would be an 8-woman Royal Rumble with Megumi Kudo as the referee for the match. This Royal Rumble would include the likes of Mio and Io Shirai, Kana, Rei, as well as former FMW women's wrestler Bad Nurse Nakamura. She would end up coming in and using her cane on everyone, and when Kudo would ask to take the cane away from her, she would end up just leaving the ring as Kana, Io Shirai, and Rei would go at it with one another. Kana would end up kicking Rei out of the ring under the bottom rope, and Io Shirai would climb up to the top and dive onto Rei on the outside, eliminating herself, not knowing the rules of a Royal Rumble. Rei would then end up knocking Kana over the top to eliminate her when Bad Nurse Nakamura would come into the ring and begin using her cane once again. Eventually, Nakamura would end up dropping her cane, and as she would go to pick it up, Megumi Kudo would not let her grab it, and as they're fighting over the cane, Rei would end up coming over and rolling up Nakamura with the schoolgirl for the win, so Megumi Kudo counts the 3 to give Rei the win, which would really upset Nakamura, her longtime rival in FMW, but eventually Nakamura would end up just raising Megumi Kudo's hand in respect. And then the main event's going to be Atsushi Onita, The Great Sasuke, and Nanjyo Hayato teaming up to take on Wing Kanemaru, Riki Fuji, and Magnitude Kishiwada in a no-ropes barbed wire death match. Onita and Kanemaru, they would start off by giving each other headbutts to one another before going to the outside and brawling on the outside of the ring when Nanjyo would end up hitting a tope con hilo over the barbed wire onto Kanemaru on the outside, and then Onita would then end up taking Riki into the crowd before finding a table to pile drive Riki through, but this table would not break. There would be no give. You could tell it kind of messed up Riki's hip as a result. Then they would end up taking that table and setting up next to the ring as Onita would send Kanemaru into it, and it still would not break, so this table has no give whatsoever. Eventually, the table would be thrown into the ring where Onita and Sasuke would end up dropping Kanemaru onto it, and it would finally break. Kanemaru would end up picking up the broken table piece and using it on Onita's forehead, which would lead to Onita bleeding from the forehead, which I believe is the first time I've seen Onita bleed from the forehead since 1995, before he retired in FMW, the first time. And then Kanemaru and Kishiwada, they would place a ladder over Sasuke and both hit the ladder with chairs, and Riki would end up grabbing Onita and trying to send him into the barbed wire, but Onita would end up reversing it and sending Riki into the barbed wire instead, and then smash Kanemaru, Kishiwada, and Riki over the head with the broken table piece. Riki would end up grabbing a hold of Onita as Kanemaru and Kishiwada would focus on Nanjyo, with Kanemaru hitting a Death Valley bomb on Nanjyo, and then he would switch spots with Riki, who would come over and hit a kamikaze on Nanjyo, followed by Kishiwada hitting a last ride powerbomb on him. Like I said, Nanjo's promoting the show. He's going to be the star of the match. Onita would end up eventually spitting green mist in Kanemaru's face and then throwing him into barbed wire, and then Onita would end up slamming Riki as Nanjyo would climb up to the top of the the ladder and hit a moonsault onto Ricky to get the win. So Nanjyo, Ricky, and Sasuke get the win. Afterwards, Onita would try to do his Onita theater, but the mic would be all messed up and it would just make this horrible loud noise throughout the building. They would end up getting the microphone fixed, and Nanjyo would end up taking it and thanking both Hayabusa and Megumi Kudo, who were at ringside, for everything they did for FMW. He would go over and pose with both of them to end the show. So there definitely was some hits and misses with this show, just bringing back FMW, the nostalgia and everything. There's going to be some good and there's going to be some bad. The bad being, hey, a lot of these guys, they're beaten up from having this kind of match for the last 15, 20 years or so, and so their bodies are not going to be able to do what they could do 20 years ago, but, they're still good workers. Nanjo's a good worker still. Kanemaru can still kind of go when he wants to. Onita can still bring the charisma and everything, and Sasuke's kind of hit or miss at this point. The match overall was good, though. It lacked some heat. It lacked really the FMW passion that Nanjyo was trying to provide, but at this point, I feel like, trying to do a show like this in Osaka was the big mistake here. But, Nanjo's from Osaka. He knows this region. He felt like he could, it would be easier for him to run a show like this in Osaka rather than Korakuen Hall. But the show probably would have done better, or at least had more heat as a result, if it had been, if it had been done in Korakuen Hall, just because, that's where FMW was really based out of. The hardcore fan base, the smart fans, they're going to come, that were loyal FMW fans, they're going to come to a Korakuen Hall show before they're going to come to an Osaka show. So, as a result, this promotion, I'll go over here in a little while, this promotion definitely, as a result of the show not doing as well as Nanjyo was hoping, would have a big-time facelift to this promotion.
The Apache Army would run a special show on August 28th at the Osaka Minami Move-On Arena with Atsushi Onita on the show. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so Onita's going to team up with the Osaka-based team of Asian Cougar and Hayata. They're going to go up against the Apache Army team of Kentaro Kanemaru, Tetsuhiro Kuroda, and Daisaku Shimoda. Onita and Kanemaru, they would start off by slapping each other and then headbutting one another. Eventually, they would all end up brawling around ringside as Kanemaru would end up setting up a table in the ring and head up to the second level of the building as Shimoda would place Hayata on the table, with Kanemaru diving off the rafters, sending Hayata through the table. Onita would then end up grabbing a piece of the broken table and would begin smashing Kanemaru over the head with it. Hayata would then end up stacking chairs over Kuroda's body outside the ring as Asian Cougar would dive over the top, landing on Kuroda. Kanemaru and Hayata would end up being left alone in the ring as the others would end up brawling all in the crowd, as Kanemaru would end up hitting a senton splash followed by a kick to the chest by Kanemaru for the win. Afterwards, Onita would end up getting on the mic and doing his Onita theater before Kanemaru would end up just taking the mic, and it would look like Kanemaru and Onita were going to finally make up and show respect to one another, but instead Kanemaru would end up attacking Onita, and they would begin brawling in the crowd as Onita would end up throwing Kanemaru back in the ring and just taking off as the rest of the Apache Army would end the show doing the Team No Respect dance. So he's freelance worker, he's going to work wherever or whoever's willing to pay him. I like that they kept Onita and Kanemaru still at odds here. Still, they've never gotten along ever since Kanemaru turned on Onita with the Zen group back in 97. But sadly, the next time Onita would end up showing up in the Apache Army in 2012, their dislike for one another is just forgotten, and they would end up teaming up on the babyface team to go up against the heels. So the fact that Kanemaru would end up attacking Onita is just dropped the next time Onita would end up showing up for the Apache Army promotion.
01 would have the semifinals of their annual junior heavyweight tournament on September 17th at Korakuen Hall, with Minio Fujita involved as well as a hardcore match with Masato Tanaka. Can you go over these matches?
Yeah, I haven't talked about Minio Vegeta in a while. After WMF closed down in 2008, he worked some freelance before finding a home with 01 to join their junior heavyweight division. Well, 01 holds a junior heavyweight tournament every year, and Minio Vegeta, this is going to be his first time participating in their tournament. would defeat Super Crazy in the first round to advance to the semifinals to take on Hayato Jr. Fujita, a Michinoku pro wrestler. So they're going to have a match to determine who reaches the finals of the tournament later in the show. In this match, Hayato would end up knocking Minio Fujita out of the ring right away, but as Hayato would end up getting on the apron to deliver a kick to Minio, Minio would end up grabbing Hayato's leg and delivering a dragon screw leg whip, sending Hayato to the outside, with Minio getting back in the ring and delivering a dive to the outside on Hayato. Minio would end up getting back in the ring and placing Hayato in an ankle lock, with Hayato screaming in pain, trying to grab the rope before finally managing to do so to break the move. Hayato would then try to deliver a suplex to Minio Fujita, but Minio would end up landing on his feet and charging at Hayato, but Hayato would end up meeting him with a spear. Hayato would then begin running his knee into Minio's head in the corner and then try for a clothesline, but Minio would try for a Ganasuke clutch, with Hayato getting out of it right away and laying Minio out with a kick to the chest, and they would begin striking one another, with Minio charging at Hayato, but Hayato would end up catching him and placing him in with the KID, which is his submission hold. Minio would not be able to get out of it, and the referee would be forced to stop the match to give the win to Hayato. So Hayato ends up getting the win over Minio Fujita. Fujita looks strong here, not actually having tapped out, and the referee having to stop the match, and it's a good match overall. Fujita has a lot of potential here as a really talented junior heavyweight, but 0-1 really never would push Fujita very far in this promotion, mostly because of his being a junior heavyweight, and they just didn't really see the talent that I personally see in him and a lot of others would see in him, but 0-1 never really was that high and never even really made Minio Fujita one of their top junior heavyweights even. And then Masato Tanaka is going to take on Necro Butcher in a hardcore match, and they would start this match off with the dueling chair spot before Necro Butcher would end up just throwing his chair down and telling Tanaka to hit him over the head with his chair, which Tanaka would oblige by doing so, and Necro Butcher would begin getting energy from getting hit over the head with the chair. Eventually they would end up brawling in the crowd, with Tanaka throwing Necro Butcher in a stack of chairs. Eventually they would both end up taking a seat on a chair in the ringside area and just begin punching one another in the face before Necro Butcher would end up just kicking Tanaka off the chair. Necro Butcher would then end up setting up a chair outside the ring and climb up the apron, but Tanaka would end up tossing Necro off the apron onto the chair before they would end up going up to the bleachers, with Tanaka suplexing Necro Butcher off the bleachers onto a stack of chairs. Eventually Tanaka would end up placing Necro Butcher on a table outside the ring and delivering a dive off the top turnbuckle, sending Necro Butcher through to the table. Necro Butcher would end up getting control of the match, and he would end up setting up a table in the corner and hitting Tanaka with the Death Valley Bomb, sending Tanaka through the table in the corner, and then delivering a tire driver on Tanaka. Necro would then end up climbing up to the top rope, but Tanaka would grab a chair and smash it over Necro Butcher's head, and then suplex Necro Butcher off the top onto a stack of chairs, and then finally Tanaka would smash Necro Butcher over the head with the chair once again, and then hit a sliding D on Necro Butcher for the win in a really good, entertaining, hardcore match, with these two guys having really good chemistry with one another. Afterwards, they would end up hugging, and I believe this is one of the last times Necro Butcher would even work in Japan. But again, this was a really entertaining match. It was better than the Kasai match the year prior even, but Tanaka's an awesome worker. Necro Butcher, he's willing to take a lot of pain, a lot of punishment here, and this match shows, they're both willing, even at an older age, for both of these guys, they were really willing to go all out here to have this really entertaining match.
Takashi Sasaki would promote his 15th anniversary show on September 22nd at Shinjuku Face. Can you tell us how this show did and what were some of the top matches on it?
Yeah, so they would announce 235 fans for this show, which is not a good number for the 600 plus seat Shinjuku Face. This show would see the debut of the new Black Freedoms ring, so they're getting rid of the red Freedoms ring and going with the black ring, which they would still keep up to this day. On this show, because it's Takashi Sasaki's 15th anniversary show, he once again books Goru Surumi, who worked for the IWA Kakusei promotion that Sasaki got started in 1996, and Surumi was running it. So Surumi is on the show teaming up with the Brahmin Brothers, and they're going to take on the Kojika army of Great Kojika, Antonio Honda, and Ken Oka. Surumi and Kojika, they would start off the match, but the Brahmin Brothers would end up going after Kojika, with Ken Oka going after one of the Brahmin Brothers as they would go into the crowd with one of the Brahmin brothers throwing a fan's beer in Oka's face. And this is notable with how many empty seats in the building there are that you can see. Kojika and Honda, they would join in on fighting the Brahmin brothers around Shinjuku Face, while Surumi would stay in the ring. Kojika would end up using a fan's umbrella on both the Brahmin brothers while in the crowd, and then eventually Ken Oka would make it back in the ring, and Surumi would put him in a submission move with Kojika having to make the save. Eventually, 2 separate times, a Brahmin brother would grab Kojika, and Surumi would take a swing, and both times Kojika would move out of the way, and Surumi would actually end up hitting a Brahmin brother, as Kojika would put Ki in the Iron Claw, and then lift him up and throw him down on the mat for the win. So the Kojika Army get the win over Surumi and the Brahmin brothers. And then the main event's going to be Takashi Sasaki and Shuji Ishikawa taking on the team of Takawa Mori and Jintaro. The ending spot here is Sasaki hitting a powerbomb, followed by Shuji Ishikawa delivering a standing dropkick to Jintaro, followed by Sasaki hitting a Fuki charging lariat, and then finishing Jintaro off with a Michinoku 2 driver for the win. So Sasaki gets the win on his 15th anniversary. Afterwards, the entire roster on the show, which consists of Freedoms, Big Japan, and DDT talent to symbolize Sasaki's 15-year career, they all come to the ring and pose for the cameras to end the show. So again, not a successful show for Takashi Sasaki here. Even though it was supposed to be, hey, here are all these guys that I've worked with and, wrestled with for the last 15 years. The fans really don't care, especially when in comparison to these death matches and everything like that. Sasaki trying to kind of build the promotion around him and make it about him just is not really working, especially if you try and put it in a bigger building like Shinjuku Face compared to Shinkiba. So Sasaki would learn his lesson going forward to kind of not really be the focal point, and eventually he's going to learn, and eventually everyone's going to learn that Jun Kasai is the star of the promotion. He's the top draw, and he has the best matches, and he is the one keeping this promotion going.
The Apache Army would have 2 WEW title matches on the September 28th show at Shinkiba, including Kanemaru and Kuroda now defending their newly won WEW tag team titles in the main event. Can you go over these matches?
Yeah, so the WEW title would be successfully defended in the semi-main event when Arashi would put away Daisaku Shimoda, and then the WEW tag titles would be defended in the main event with Kanemaru and Kuroda going up against Hiroki and Yusaku Obata. Kanemaru and Hiroki, they would go at it to start the match, with Kanemaru hitting a moonsault on Hiroki, and then following that up with shooting a snot rocket at Hiroki, which would get Hiroki up and begin a chop battle with Kanemaru and Hiroki going at it, with Kanemaru getting the better end of it. Kanemaru would then climb up to the top, but Hiroki would end up suplexing Kanemaru off the top rope and then tagging in Obata, who Kanemaru would grab and hit Obata with a German suplex. Kuroda would end up coming in and picking up Obata to help Kanemaru out, and they would end up hitting a super power bomb on Obata. Eventually, Obata would end up coming back and slamming Kanemaru and going for a Phoenix Splash, but Kanemaru would end up moving out of the way and then hitting a Senton Splash, with Obata still managing to kick out. Kanemaru would then end up going for a suplex, but Hiroki would go over and hit Kanemaru in the back, and Obata would roll Kanemaru up with a Sanson clutch, but Kanemaru would still manage to kick out at 2. Hiroki would then lay Kanemaru out with a knee to the head, as Obata would come off the top with a flying DDT on Kanemaru for the win. So Obata and Hiroki win the WEW tag titles. Afterwards, Michinoku Pros Takeshi Minamino and Manji Moru would rush the ring and begin attacking Kanemaru, with Tomohiko Hashimoto hitting the ring and helping them attack Kanemaru. So Hashimoto has turned heel here against Kanemaru and the Apache Army. Hashimoto would then get on the mic and announce that he was leaving the Apache Army to start up his new group called the Apache Demolition. So there's going to be a new heel stable here in the Apache Army with Hashimoto, Minamino, and Manji Maru, and it's going to grow going forward. So, again, this promotion just kind of trying to get its identity, and here now they've established, here's the top heel group, here's the top face group, and then you have Kanemaru, willing to put over the other guys like Hiroki and Obata, and this was a really good match overall. Following all that, Kanemaru would end up going over and shaking Obata and Hiroki's hands for winning the title. So Kanemaru, still is willing to help put over the younger guys, give Obata and Hiroki, who are really talented wrestlers, and they're making sure that there's different layers to this promotion. Again, this isn't just, Kanemaru's the top face and he beats everybody or he takes on an outsider. No, Kanemaru knows at this point, he's 41 years old at this point. He's willing to help put over the other guys, the younger wrestlers, to help get them ready for main event spots. And like I said, now they have a heel group here going forward to take on the top baby faces.
A promotion called Masked Fiesta would include Hayabusa booking a match on the show. Can you talk about this match and the special surprise that would take place after the main event?
Yeah, so Hayabusa is promoted for this show as a guest commentator, as well as getting to book one of the matches on the show, like a Hayabusa Dream Match. And he would book the match, a 6-man between Tenryu, revising his role as Big Hayabusa, so he's wearing the mask and the outfit, as well as Great Sasuke and Jinsei Shinzaki, two of Hayabusa's closest friends. And they're all going to take on Kinsuke Sasaki, Prince Devitt, and El Samurai. And this match would start off with Kinsuke Sasaki and Big Hayabusa going at it in a chop fest before Sasaki would end up knocking Hayabusa down, and then Shinzaki would end up coming in off the top rope on Sasaki and trying to powerbomb Sasaki, but Sasaki would end up overpowering Shinzaki and flipping him over and tagging in Devitt, who would come in and hit some impressive-looking drop kicks to both Shinzaki and Sasuke before missing a double knee drop, and he would end up being met with a super kick by Shinzaki, who would tag in the great Sasuke. Sasuke would then end up diving off the top rope and missing Devitt completely, and Sasuke would end up just staying right there, just being completely frozen in the ring, as Devitt would end up kicking him out of the ring and then delivering a tope con hilo onto the outside on Sasuke. All the wrestlers would then end up doing a dive on the outside, with Big Hayabusa finishing it off by diving onto everybody. And then Big Hayabusa would come back and begin chopping and punching El Samurai, while Sasuke would end up hitting an Asai moonsault onto Devitt, as Big Hayabusa would then put El Samurai in a scorpion deathlock for the win. This was an entertaining match. I wouldn't say it was a great match or anything like that, but it was definitely an entertaining match. Afterwards, they would show Hayabusa doing commentary with a big smile on his face, and then the main event would take place, and then after the main event would be the big reveal that Hayabusa's music would begin to play with all the wrestlers in the ring, and Hayabusa is sitting in his wheelchair, and Hayabusa would then stand up, and with help from Jinsei Shinzaki holding him, Hayabusa would climb up the stairs with Kota Ibushi and Kinsuke Sasaki helping him in the ring, as Hayabusa would walk in the ring of Korakuen Hall for the first time in nearly 10 years since his horrific injury at Korakuen Hall. Shima would have the wheelchair ready for him, but Hayabusa would want to continue to stand in the ring, as, like I said, this would mark the first time that Hayabusa is really standing in the ring at Korakuen Hall after his injury. So this is an awesome, amazing moment. The fans are chanting for him. Hayabusa's music is playing. He's got a big smile on his face. All the wrestlers are in the ring with him, a lot of them being his friends, and some of them being his childhood heroes, like Mil Mascaras. And they would end up all posing in the ring with Hayabusa before Hayabusa would be given the microphone to thank the fans for coming to the show, and what would be a really cool scene. Afterwards, Hayabusa and Tenryu as Big Hayabusa would take pictures together as the fans would continue to chant for Hayabusa. This really meant a lot to Hayabusa to get to do this. Hayabusa would end up doing something very similar in 2015, walking into the ring at Korakuen Hall. We'll go over that. That did not mean as much to Hayabusa, sadly, due to some circumstances as this did. But like I said, this was a really cool scene, a really cool moment. I'm glad that Hayabusa got to do this with a bunch of his friends there, like Shinzaki and Sasuke. So this was a really cool scene, and like I said, it meant a lot to Hayabusa to get to do it, and he really wanted to do more than this, but this was the first step of, I'm going to walk up into the ring in my Hayabusa costume and be introduced for the final time. This was the first step of that, and sadly it didn't end up happening, but at least this cool moment did end up happening for him.
The Apache Army would then run another Shinkiba show on October 26th, with the Apache Demolition Team taking on the Apache Army in an 8-man tag. Can you go over this main event match on the show?
So the Apache Army team would consist of Kentaro Kanemaru, Yusaku Obata, Hiroki, and Tetsuhiro Kuroda, and the Apache Demolition team would consist of Tomohiko Hashimoto, Kohei Sato, Takeshi Minamino, and Manji Maru. They would start off by brawling all outside the ring, with Kanemaru coming back to the ring bloody, with the Demolition team focusing on Kanemaru's cut. Eventually, Kanemaru would go up to the top as Obata would slam Minamino when Kinjo Nishimura would appear. He's a independent, small junior heavyweight independent wrestler, and Nishimura would toss a chair at Kanemaru, knocking him off the top, and then Nishimura would hit a flying drop kick on Obata, and then a back suplex to Kanemaru as Menji Maru would end up hitting Obata with the suplex, and then Minamino would hit a lariat, with Minamino picking up the win over Obata. So the Demolition team get the win. Afterwards, the Apache Army locker room, they would come out to help Kanemaru and the others, but they would end up being laid out when Shinshuku Shark, who had just recently suffered a motorcycle injury, would hit the ring, and he would lay Minamino out with a punch. But as he would go for Nishimura, he would be attacked by Hashimoto, and they would lay out Shinshuku Shark, who had already had one really bad arm. One of his arms was pretty much dead, so he was trying to fight with one arm. And Kanemaru would eventually end up coming back to the ring and with a barbed wire bat and chasing everyone off. So again, this is just to kind of establish the Apache Demolition, as this is the top heel side. They're going to get the wins here for a little while to establish themselves as a threat to the Apache Army. Like I said, the whole focus of the promotion here going forward is Kanemaru and the babyface Apache Army side, and then Hashimoto and the healed Apache Demolition side.
Freedoms would run a show at Shinkiba on October 27th and would bring back the old WEW Hardcore Tag titles from FMW in the main event. What were some of the top notes that took place here?
Yeah, so they would announce a crowd of 151 fans for this show, which is just, at this point, the standard Freedom's Shinkiba show number when there's not a deathmatch main event. On this show, Jintaro would take on the Great Kajika in a rematch from last year's main event Korakuen Hall show. The Great Kajika would end up throwing Jintaro outside the ring when Antonio Honda and Ken Oko would begin attacking Jintaro, and all three would end up triple teaming Jintaro before sending him back in the ring with blood running down Jintaro's forehead. Jintaro would fight back and place Kajika in the figure 4, with Honda pulling the referee out of the ring, and both Honda and Oko would end up going after Jintaro, with Kajika covering Jintaro with no referee, as Honda and Oko would count 3, but nothing would end up happening. Jintaro would fight back and clothesline Oka and then back suplex Honda, but he would end up trying to back suplex Kajika, and Kajika would end up blocking him as the referee would get back in the ring, as Jintaro would end up hitting a horrible looking clothesline and then hitting Kajika with the super kick for the win. So Jintaro once again defeats the Great Kajika. And then the main event's going to be a WEW Hardcore Tag Team title match. The WEW Hardcore Tag titles were started in FMW in 2000, with Mama Sasaki and Hideki Osaka winning them. And then pretty much throughout 2000, they either were challenging for them or defending them up until Mammoth and Hosaka would end up breaking up in 2001. And after FMW closed down, the titles would eventually end up in Big Japan before eventually going to Kaientai Dojo, and that's where they've been pretty much for the last couple years at this point, is just being defended for the Kaientai Dojo promotion. And Kinjo Mashimo and Ryuji Sekini, two Kaientai Dojo wrestlers, they're the champions at this point, and they're going to defend against Mammoth, the first WEW Hardcore Tag Team Champion, and Kamui. In this match, Mammoth and Kamui, they would end up jumping the Kaientai Dojo team to start the match, as Mammoth would end up hitting Mashimo with the cane, while Kamui would ram Sekini into the Shinkiba wall. Mammoth would end up taking Mashimo up the bleachers and throw a bottle at him, and try to make the pin on Mashimo at the top of the bleachers. Kamui would then place a chair and deliver a running drop kick off the ladder, sending Sekini flying, as Mammoth would grab a ladder and begin hitting Mashimo with it before sending him back in the ring, and they would begin exchanging chops with one another. Mammoth would end up grabbing a barbed wire bat that Mashimo would end up grabbing from him and begin using it, as Kamui would place a piece of a board over a set of chairs and place Sekini on top of it and climb up to the top, but Mashimo would grab Kamui when Mammoth would end up making the save and trying to chokeslam Mashimo, but Sekine would end up hitting Mammoth with a chair, and then Mashimo would slam Mammoth on the board that would not really break, as Mammoth would end up just falling to the floor. Mashimo and Sekine, they would then begin double-teaming Kamui for the longest time, when Mammoth would finally make the save by throwing a ladder and knocking them out of the ring, as Kamui would end up hitting an Asai moonsault onto both of them. Kamui and Sekine would then begin going at it in the ring, as Kamui would set a chair over Sekine's neck, and Mammoth and Kamui would then deliver a double Mammoth home run to Sekine, as Mashimo would end up escaping. Kamui would then dive over the top onto Mashimo, with Mammoth nailing a powerbomb and then finishing Sekine off with a barbed wire bat assisted 29 years old for the win, to win back the WEW Hardcore Tag Team titles. This is Mammoth's first time winning the titles since breaking up with Hideki Osaka back in 2001, but now he gets to be champions with his longtime student Kamui, and they're going to defend the WEW Hardcore Tag titles here in Freedoms going forward.
The Apache Army would return to Osaka on November 6th. Can you go over who the special draw was for us on the show and the main event match that took place?
Yeah, so Yoshihiro Takayama, he's going to be an honorary Apache Demolition member for the show. He's going to team up with Tomohiko Hashimoto and Asian Cougar. They're going to go up against Kentaro Kanemaru, Tetsuhiro Kuroda, and Arashi. The match would start off with all six brawling around ringside, as Nishimura would get involved again, and he would hit the ring and set up a table that Hashimoto would powerbomb Kuroda through. They would end up tossing Kuroda out of the ring, and Hashimoto would begin holding on to him, with Takayama coming over with a big boot to Kuroda's face. Kanemaru would end up getting tagged in and bring in a piece of the broken table, as he would smash it over Hashimoto, Takayama, and Asian Cougar's head. Kanemaru would then suplex Takayama off the top, and then hit a senton splash, and then hit a really bad looking German suplex with no lift, when Nishimura would interfere to help Takayama hit a backdrop, followed by a running knee to Kanemaru's face for the win. So Takayama picks up the win. You know, he's the big attraction here. He's the big star of the show. So, you know, they're going to bring him in to defeat, to get the, help the Apache Demolition once again defeat the Apache Army, with Kanemaru being the victim here.
Tenryu Project would hold a special show on November 10th at Korakuen Hall, with Kanemaru teaming up with Jado and Geto. Why would they team up here, and who did they face?
Yeah, so Kanemaru is teaming up with Jado and Geto here, and Kanemaru would come to the ring with Fuyuki's jacket on. All three of them would come to the ring with Fuyuki's Shoot It 95 theme playing, as Kanemaru, in a way, is replacing Fuyuki for this match, since Fuyuki had the war ties with Jado and Geto, but obviously Fuyuki, having passed away in 2003, couldn't be on the show, so, you know, Kanemaru was really close with Fuyuki, and so he's the best suitable replacement, especially since he already has ties with Jado and Geto. They would end up taking on the Great Kabuki, the Great Kabuki's protege, Kabuki, and Tajiri. In this match, Tajiri and Geto, they would start off the match before the Great Kabuki and Jado would end up going at it, and then finally Kanemaru and Kabuki would face off, with Kanemaru throwing Kabuki outside the ring and Geto throwing him into a stack of chairs. Jado and Geto, they would begin smashing him over the back with chair shots. Kabuki would end up getting back in, and he would end up going after Kanemaru with kicks, as he would end up tagging into Tajiri, who would go after all three with kicks, and then deliver a handspring elbow to Jado and Geto before he would tag in the Great Kabuki, who would lay out all three with punches before tagging in his protege Kabuki, who Kanemaru would end up taking to the ground and just start pounding at. Eventually, Tajiri would grab Kanemaru and then try to send him towards the turnbuckle for an awaiting Great Kabuki, but Kanemaru would reverse it and send Tajiri, who would stop short of the Great Kabuki. And when Kanemaru would charge at both of them, he would end up being met with a double miss spot by Great Kabuki and Tajiri, as Kabuki would lay him out with a kick. So Great Kabuki's protege, the Kabuki, ends up getting the win over Kanemaru. So this was just pretty much a reunion, having Kanemaru, Jado, and Geto play the role of the old Fuyuki-gun that worked for War, and them going up against the Misspitters. This wasn't really anything of a match, but it was cool. It's always cool to see the Great Kabuki and Tajiri team up here and do a double miss spot.
Big Japan would hold the finals of their tag team tournament on November 22nd at Korakuen Hall. What happened in the main event's finals?
Yeah, so earlier in the show, Daisuke Sekimoto and Yuji Okabayashi, they had beaten the Brahman brothers, and Jun Kasai and Jackie Numazawa, they had defeated Yuko Miyamoto and Asami Kodaka, so both teams would advance to the finals. The main event of the show this is going to be a barbed wire board death match. They would start out by brawling in the crowd. Numazawa and Okabayashi, they would make it back in the ring with Okabayashi already bleeding, as Numazawa would end up tossing him into the barbed wire board. Kasai would then place Sekimoto on a table and climb up a ladder in the ring and then dive off the ladder, sending Sekimoto through the table. Numazawa would end up slamming Okabayashi on the barbed wire board and then place the board over him, as both Kasai and Numazawa would smash it with a chair. Kasai and Sekimoto, they would begin going at it, with Sekimoto suplexing Kasai on the ladder and then tagging in the bloody Okabayashi, who would pick up Kasai and put him in the torture rack, with Numazawa having to make the save for his partner. Kasai would end up picking up a chair and smashing it over Okabayashi's head, and then hitting a reverse Tiger Driver, followed by delivering a Pearl Harbor Splash, with Sekimoto coming in and making the save by picking up Kasai and delivering a German suplex to him. Sekimoto would then try for a lariat to Numazawa, but would end up accidentally hitting Okabayashi instead, as Numazawa would then hit Sekimoto with a dropkick, and Kasai would come in and hit Sekimoto with 4 lariats before finally knocking him off his feet. Kasai would then grab Sekimoto and then end up suplexing him off the apron to the outside, and then Numazawa would go over and try to hit Okabayashi with a broken table piece, but Okabayashi would end up grabbing it from him and begin smashing it over Numazawa's head, and then Okabayashi would end up climbing up to the top and delivering a dive off of it onto Numazawa, who would still manage to kick out, with the crowd now going crazy chanting for Okabayashi. Eventually, Okabayashi would finish off Numazawa with the powerbomb on a stack of chairs for the win tournament this year, in an awesome match. All these teams, Sekimoto, Okabayashi, Kasai, Numazawa, Miyamoto, Kodaka, you add them in and chances are you're going to have a really excellent match. All these guys are hitting on all cylinders at this point of their careers, and as a result, Big Japan is putting on great main event matches with the likes of these guys.
Freedoms would hold a 20th anniversary show for The Winger on November 23rd at Shinkiba. How did this show do as a result, and what were some of the matches that took place?
So they would announce a crowd of 214 fans, so this being the Wingers anniversary show definitely helped bump the crowd up a little bit. There would be a 3-way tag team match with Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Riki Fuji teaming up to take on the Brahman brothers, as well as Great Kajika and Antonio Honda. Kajika and Honda, they would get met by the Brahman brothers, spitting water in their face as they would come to the ring. They would all begin brawling all over ringside as the Brahman brothers would go after Kajika with a bucket of water, with Kajika knocking one of the Brahman brothers down, causing the water to spill. The Brahmins would focus on Kikuchi and drop him on a street cone in the ring. Eventually, Riki would end up getting in the ring and going up against the Brahman brothers and throwing them out of the ring, with Kikuchi coming in and knocking Riki out of the ring despite him being his partner, and calling Kajika to the ring where they would do a sumo match until Riki and the Brahman brothers would end up coming in and tying Kajika and Kikuchi up. Eventually, Ki would end up grabbing a hold of Antonio Honda with Shu spitting Indian ink, but Honda would manage to move out of the way as Shu would end up getting Ki in the face instead, and Honda would manage to roll Ki up for the win. So Antonio Honda and Great Kajika pick up the win in this 3-way tag match. And then the main event's going to be the Winger going up against Kaori Yoneyama, a longtime Japanese women's independent wrestler. This is going to be a drunken tequila death match where the rules are every minute, if you're down on the mat, then you have to take a shot of tequila. And the Winger would end up having to take the first 2 shots of tequila as a result, and he would end up getting frisky and placing Yoneyama on the turnbuckle, and where he would begin to crawl over to her and just begin creepily looking at her. Eventually, Yoneyama would end up having to take a shot of the tequila, and the Winger would end up grabbing her and begin spinning her around, trying to make her throw up. There would be a spot where they would both end up having to take a shot of tequila, and the Winger would end up trying to climb up to the top but to hit a senton, but he would end up falling off due to being too drunk, as Yoneyama would climb up, and with the assistance of some other women wrestlers taking out the Winger, she would hit 3 sentons to get the win over the Winger. And this is going to be the Winger's new gimmick. Pretty much it's just he's going to play a creep. He's going to go up against women wrestlers and face off against them. And, he's interested in them as well. So he'll put them in the corner and just look at them like a creep. So this is going to be the Winger's new mid-card comedy gimmick here going forward.
Nanjyo Hayato would try one more time with FFF on November 25th in Osaka. How did this show do, and what FMW involvement was there?
Yeah, so I talked about earlier how Nanjyo had ran a show back in August that did not do very well under the FFF name. That was pretty much a FMW nostalgia promotion. And the show only did about 600 fans in an 1,800-seat building, which was a financial loss for Nanjyo. Nanjyo had announced that he was going to run one more show, at least, under the FFF name, with this FMW nostalgic, theme going, but the promotion was, because he had lost money on it, he was gonna not go as far into it like he did back in August. So he's gonna run a 500-seat building, and he's gonna kind of scrap some of the FMW nostalgic ideas that he had for the promotion just because it didn't do very well the first time. And so he only really has a couple of FMW wrestlers on the show. Kanemaru would work the undercard, and then Masato Tanaka would work the main event against Nanjyo. Tanaka had missed the August show because he's a 0-1 wrestler, and 0-1 had already scheduled a show that day, so Tanaka couldn't make it. So Tanaka really wanted to work the promotion, but he couldn't, and so this was kind of a make-up, him working the main event of this show, but this show would not do well either, only drawing about 100 fans in this 500-seat building. So again, another financial loss for Nanjyo with this FMW nostalgic theme going. In this match, though, it would be a hardcore match. Nanjyo would send Tanaka outside the ring and hit an Asai moonsault onto him, and then they would end up fighting around the outside of the ring until Tanaka would set up a table and climb up to the top turnbuckle and send Nanjyo through the table. Tanaka would end up bringing Nanjyo back into the ring and setting up a stack of chairs, but as he would go for a sliding D, Nanjyo would hop up and pick Tanaka up and hit a Michinoku driver on the stack of chairs on Tanaka, and then follow that up with hitting a moonsault onto Tanaka, but Tanaka would still manage to kick out. Tanaka would get up and try for a rolling elbow, but Nanjyo would end up rolling him up with a cradle, with Tanaka kicking out again, which would end up being Nanjo's last shot, as Tanaka would end up laying him out with a lariat and then finishing him off with the sliding D for the win. Afterwards, Nanjyo and Tanaka would shake hands, as Nanjyo would pretty much just drop the whole FMW aspect of this promotion, and any FFF show afterwards would essentially just be Osaka or Kyoto-based wrestlers that were in the region from the area. Pretty much after this, there is no sign of FMW. Nanjyo, after two unsuccessful shows, just pretty much dropped it all together.
Atsushi Onita and the Great Sasuke would team up on December 11th at Korakuen Hall in a no-ropes barbed wire death match. Can you go over this match?
So I talked about last episode how these Space War matches were kind of an excuse for Sasuke to just have these crazy matches, getting in a barrel and diving over the top into the outside, things like that. This match, it's going to be Atsushi Onita and the Great Sasuke taking on Shu Sato and Ki Sato, the Brahmin brothers not going under their Brahmin brother gimmick. It's going to be a no-rope barbed wire death match with the losing team being banished from Iwate, a north region in Japan that Michinoku Pro would run regularly, although this match is in Tokyo. During this match, Sasuke early on would take some of the pliers and cut off some of the barbed wire, and then he would end up getting in the barrel and climb up to the top and dive onto the outside with the barrel over him. Onita would end up fighting one of the Sato brothers in the crowd, while the other Sato brother would roll the barrel over Sasuke. Sasuke would succumb to his inner Sabu and just climb up to the top of the ladder outside the ring and dive off of it onto the barrel. So Sasuke's just screwing around at this point, just showing off, look what I'm willing to do to myself, even though it's not doing anything to my opponent. Ki would end up placing Sasuke in a luggage cart and just roll him into the crowd, while Onita would just smash Shu's head into the wall at Korakuen. Sasuke would then place two ladders next to each other and again place a rod in between them, and again, just like last year, fail at doing his gymnastic spot, as the rod would break and Sasuke would fall down. Sasuke would then try to do this spot again, except this time one of the ladders would just topple over, as all this is going on, Onita is just fighting both of the Brahmin brothers, pretty much. Eventually, Sasuke would climb up one of the ladders, but both Sato brothers would go over and send him flying off the ladder into the barbed wire. The Sato brothers then would tie up Sasuke to a harness, and then this harness would have a barbed wire ball attached to it from a string, as the Sato brothers would pull back the string and let the barbed wire ball hit Sasuke in the chest. Ki would then try to go really far back with the string outside the ring, and it would end up breaking and hitting him instead to a loud ovation. And then Onita, he would end up taking the string around Ki's neck and let go of the barbed wire ball to hit him. Shu, on the other hand, though, he would bring out a mannequin with the great Sasuke attire on it with barbed wire wrapped around it, and then they would go over and throw Onita into the barbed wire. They would then take Sasuke with one holding the Sasuke barbed wire mannequin outside the ring, and the other would throw Sasuke outside the ring into the barbed wire mannequin. This would allow Onita the time to set up a table and pile drive Shu through it. Sasuke would then get in the barrel and dive out of the ring onto the barbed wire Sasuke mannequin. This would leave Onita with the Sato brothers, as Shu would throw powder at Onita, but he would end up moving out of the way, and Ki would get it in the face instead, as Onita would spit green mist in Shu's face. Onita would then throw Ki into the barbed wire, followed by Shu, and then both Onita and Sasuke would then put on cape costumes and deliver Thunderfire power palms to both Shu and Ki, as Sasuke would place the barbed wire Sasuke mannequin on Ki and then climb up the ladder, but fall short of hitting anything for the win. Again, another one of these insane Space War matches that go near 30 minutes. Onita and Sasuke would end up getting the win and hugging afterwards. These aren't necessarily great matches, but they're a lot of fun if you can, deal with the time being spent to set up spot after spot, and Sasuke's willing to really go all out and just do insane things even if it has nothing to do with the match.
Big Japan would return to the Yokohama Bunka Gym on December 18th. Can you go over some of the title matches on this show?
Yeah, so on this show, it's going to be a barbed wire board death match for the Big Japan Tag Team titles with Yuko Miyamoto and Asami Kodaka defending against Yoshihito Sasaki and Shinobu. In this match, Yoshihito would end up grabbing a hold of Miyamoto, and Shinobu would charge at him, but Miyamoto would manage to move out of the way, and Shinobu would accidentally strike Sasaki instead. This would not go over well with Sasaki, who would begin attacking Shinobu as the two partners begin fighting with one another, as Miyamoto and Kodaka would just watch on, as Sasaki would end up getting the better end of it by knocking Shinobu down, but this would open up Miyamoto to throw Sasaki into the barbed wire board, and then Miyamoto would grab some of the barbed wire from the barbed wire board and begin cutting open Yoshihito, so Yoshihito is now bleeding all over. Sasaki would fight back and pick up Miyamoto and hit a Death Valley bomb onto the barbed wire board, as Shinobu would come in and hit a drop kick and then an Asai moonsault onto both Miyamoto and Kodaka. Sasaki and Miyamoto would begin striking and chopping one another, with Yoshihito picking up Miyamoto with a torture rack and then throwing him into the ropes, but as Miyamoto would do his handspring elbow, he would be caught by Sasaki and would be delivered a vicious looking lariat to him, and then Sasaki would lay the barbed wire board over Miyamoto as Shinobu would hit a shooting star press, but Sasaki would go to the outside to take care of Kodaka, and that would leave Shinobu all alone with Miyamoto, who would place the barbed wire board over Shinobu, as Kodaka would end up hitting a suicide dive on Sasaki, and Miyamoto would end up hitting a moonsault and then a fire thunder, followed by getting Shinobu in an octopus hold, as Shinobu would eventually have to tap out, so Miyamoto and Kodaka end up getting the win and successfully defending the Big Japan Tag Team titles on this show. And then the main event's going to be Ryuji Ito defending the Big Japan Deathmatch title against Abdullah Kobayashi. This is a rematch from the previous year where Ito defeated Kobayashi. In that match, there was tons of light tubes, and this year there's going to be even more light tubes. So the whole gimmick here is just lots of light tubes in these big show deathmatch main events. This match is going to be a game of death match. Essentially, all these different type of weapons, concrete blocks, light tubes, kinzons, you name it, it's going to be used in this match. Ito would end up taking Kobayashi to the outside and trying to send him into the seats, but Kobayashi would manage to reverse it and send Ito into them instead. And then Kobayashi would bring Ito back in the ring and begin headbutting light tubes over Ito's head. Kobayashi would then bring out the kinzons, but Ito would end up slamming him instead, and then slam Kobayashi into a large light tube tower. But as he would go for a third slam, Kobayashi would end up picking Ito up and dropping him onto the light tube stack instead. Kobayashi would then pull out a box of forks sticking out and placing them on a stack of light tubes, but Ito would end up smashing a light tube over Kobayashi and then hitting a Hurricane Rana, sending Kobayashi into the box of forks. Ito would then place a concrete block over Kobayashi's head and begin breaking the block with another concrete block, which Ito would end up doing multiple times to Kobayashi. Ito would then end up hitting Kobayashi with a back suplex, but Kobayashi with a kinzon stuck in his head would headbutt Ito, knocking him down, but Ito would end up coming back with a concrete block to Kobayashi's head, and then a stack of light tubes that he would kick right into Kobayashi. Ito would then pull out the light tubes formed like a concrete block that he'd been pulling out a bunch of times earlier this year, and look to finish Kobayashi by placing them over his body, as he would end up hitting a dragon splash, breaking them all over Kobayashi's body, but Kobayashi would still manage to get his shoulder up. Ito and Kobayashi would then begin exchanging strikes with one another, with Kobayashi grabbing Ito and powerbombing him on the kinzons, and then delivering an elbow drop before throwing light tubes at Ito and picking Ito up and dropping him off the top rope, and following that up with another elbow drop, this time to get the win. So Abdullah Kobayashi wins back the Big Japan Deathmatch title. He ends Ryuji Ito's 19-month reign as champion. Afterwards, Kobayashi would place the belt around his neck and grab some light tubes and begin playing the light tubes like a guitar in celebration of his title win. So finally, Ryuji Ito's run as champion is over. They gave him a good, this is his second long-term run as champion, as, the top ace of the company, having all the main matches. Pretty much at this point in Big Japan, the two top guys are Ryuji Ito and Abdullah Kobayashi. They're the two that the management really trusts. They're the stars. They're the ones that can draw and have these excellent matches. And so, with Ryuji Ito ending his 19-month reign, they're now going to give the ball to Abdullah Kobayashi and give him a long-term run as champion going forward.
Jun Kasai would promote his Christmas Deathmatch show on December 25th at Korakuen Hall. Can you go over some of the noteworthy matches that took place?
Yeah, because of last year's successful Christmas Deathmatch show, and just with the Deathmatch tournaments doing so well, they feel like these Jun Kasai promoted shows are just too popular for Shinkiba at this point, and so they're going to move them to Korakuen Hall going forward. They would announce a crowd of 870 fans for this show. This is a good starting number to kind of, the Freedom Show last year was kind of their WrestleMania, what they've been building to for months. This is just kind of, hey, let's see how this product can fare at a bigger building, and it's a good starting number, I would say, because they would end up doing better going forward after this show. So again, it's just kind of getting their feet wet at being able to run Korakuen Hall regularly with these types of shows. And every year after this show, they would continue to run Korakuen Hall on Christmas Day, pretty much. So on this show, they would have a street fight death match between Kamui and Kinji Fukimoto, who at this point is still an outsider to Freedoms, who everybody hates, is a total heel, and the crowd despises him. Kamui, when he's going up to the top for his introduction, Fukimoto would end up spitting green mist in his eyes right away. They would begin fighting in the crowd, with Kamui jumping on the stage and hitting a moonsault onto Fukimoto. They would end up getting back in the ring with Fukimoto pulling out a knife and begin cutting Kamui's mask off. Kamui would end up just kicking the knife away and delivering a Hurricane Rana to Fukimoto, and just end up ripping his own mask off and grabbing the knife and begin stabbing Fukimoto with it. Kamui would then end up placing Fukimoto on a board being held up by a stack of chairs, and then the stack of another set of boards to climb up, but Fukimoto would end up getting up and climbing up the board as well, with Kamui pulling Fukimoto down, sending him into the board in a spot that would take forever to get set up and really was just not worth the execution with all the time they put into setting up boards. Fukimoto would end up charging at Kamui with a chain when Kamui would end up moving out of the way, and Fukimoto would end up falling over the top rope, with Kamui grabbing the chain, placing it around his neck, and choking Fukimoto out for the TKO win. And then Masashi Takeda would take on Masada in a Razor Crossboard death match. Takeda would end up charging at Masada early on, with Masada moving out of the way, and Takeda would end up going headfirst into the Razor Crossboard. Masada would then end up setting up a table halfway up, and try to hit a Death Valley bomb off the top on Takeda, but Takeda would manage to escape and end up suplexing Masada headfirst into the table instead. Takeda would then end up putting the Razor Crossboard against Masada's back and begin using the table to smash it into Masada's back, followed by Takeda then drop kicking the table into Masada's back. Takeda would then place Masada on the table and put the Razor Crossboard over him, but Masada would manage to get up and place a box of light bulbs on the table and throw Takeda off the top, sending him into the table. Masada would then begin breaking the light bulbs and placing Takeda on the table and trying to pile drive him through it, but Takeda would manage to pick up Masada and deliver an Olympic slam off the table onto the broken light bulbs. Masada would then come back and powerbomb Takeda onto the Razor Crossboard, but Takeda would manage to grab a hold of Masada and put him in the ankle lock, with Masada managing to get out by sending Takeda flying into the Razor Crossboard in the corner. Masada would then pull out his skewers and stick them in Takeda's head, and then place Takeda on the table on the outside, with Masada delivering a running elbow drop off the apron, sending Takeda through the table, and then pile driving him through it. Masada would then begin smashing Takeda in the head with the broken table, but Takeda would come back and spear Masada, and then try to hit the Olympic slam again on Masada, but Masada would manage to reverse it and suplex Takeda into the broken table, followed by a pile driver on the table for the win. So this match kind of started slow, but really picked up and was an excellent match. Takeda is an awesome deathmatch worker and really worked well with Masada here, and they really kept Masada strong. He's defeated Jun Kasai 2 times over the last year plus, and pretty much the only one to defeat him was the Winger at the deathmatch tournament. Just so happened to roll him up for the win. But Masada's kept strong here, defeating Jun Kasai's right-hand man as they build up Masada and Jun Kasai one more time next year. And then in the semi-main event, Takashi Sasaki and Mema Sasaki would team up to take on the team of Masato Tanaka and Daisuke Sekimoto in a hardcore match. Takashi and Mammoth, they would end up jumping Tanaka and Sekimoto right away, and they would all end up brawling all around ringside, with Tanaka and Mammoth getting into a chop battle at the same time that Takashi and Sekimoto would. They would all end up getting back in the ring, with Tanaka and Sekimoto focusing on Takashi Sasaki with repeated elbow drops to him, and then Sekimoto would end up putting Takashi Sasaki in a Boston Crab, with Mammoth having to make the save by using a barbed wire bat on Sekimoto. Mammoth would then end up hitting a lariat to Sekimoto, followed by hitting a lariat to Tanaka, and then Mammoth would end up hitting a suplex to Tanaka on a stack of chairs, followed by Takashi Sasaki hitting a Michinoku 2 driver on the stack of chairs, with Sekimoto having to make the save by delivering a German suplex to Takashi Sasaki, as both Tanaka and Sekimoto would end up following that up with hitting a double German suplex to Mammoth. Tanaka would then end up trying for a sliding D on Mammoth, but Mammoth would manage to get up and hit Tanaka with a lariat, as both Mammoth and Takashi Sasaki would end up hitting a Mammoth home run to Tanaka. Mammoth would then end up hitting Tanaka with the 29 years old, but Sekimoto would manage to make the save for Tanaka, and then Tanaka would manage to get up and hit an elbow to Mammoth in the face, knocking him down, and then Tanaka would follow that up by hitting a sliding D on Mammoth for the win. So Tanaka and Sekimoto get the win in a pretty good match. Obviously, Tanaka and Sekimoto are going to get the win because they're the bigger established names to outside promotions, so they're going to get the win. And again, it was a good hardcore match overall. And then the main event's going to be Jun Kasai going up against Shuji Ishikawa in a double glass board death match. I talked about Ishikawa a couple episodes ago. He worked for Union Pro at this point. He's gotten a lot bigger over the last couple years, and now he's working both strong style and death matches, and so a lot of independent promotions are willing to book him and use him in their main events and use him as a top guy for their promotion. About a minute into this match, Kasai would manage to send Ishikawa into the first glass board in the corner, with the glass exploding everywhere. Kasai would then pull out a table and bring Ishikawa over to it on the outside and tape Ishikawa to the table, where Kasai would then begin climbing up to the second floor of Korakuen Hall and deliver his first balcony dive in 2 years, sending Ishikawa through the table. Fans would be chanting for Kasai, but it would be noticeably more quiet than when he had done it 2 years earlier, due to a lot less fans being in the building than when he did it against Ryuji Ito, but still still always an awesome spot when Kasai does the balcony dive. Kasai would then place the other glass board on a set of chairs with Ishikawa under the glass board as Kasai would climb up to the top, but Ishikawa would manage to get up, but Kasai would end up getting under Ishikawa and delivering a power bomb to Ishikawa through the other glass board, so Ishikawa goes through both glass boards here. Kasai would then pull out a ladder and climb up to the top and hit a Pearl Harbor splash on Ishikawa, but Ishikawa would manage to kick out. Kasai would then try to hit a reverse Tiger Driver on the ladder, but Ishikawa would reverse it and send Kasai into the ladder instead. Ishikawa would then grab a stack of light tubes from under the ring and toss them at Kasai and deliver a kick, breaking them across Kasai. Ishikawa would then pick up Kasai and deliver a suplex, followed by a Fire Thunder with Kasai kicking out at one. Ishikawa would then place glass in Kasai's mouth, with Kasai spitting it out at Ishikawa, which probably seemed like a better idea than how it was executed, as the glass would barely fly out of Kasai's mouth. Kasai would then hit Ishikawa with a suplex and then place a stack of light tubes over Ishikawa as he would end up climbing up to the top of the ladder, but Ishikawa would get up and suplex Kasai off the ladder onto the light tubes, with Kasai no-selling this and getting up right away and suplexing Ishikawa and then breaking a light tube across his chest. But for the second time, this would cost Kasai, as Ishikawa would get up and come up from behind and deliver a suplex to Kasai and then pull out another stack of light tubes from under the ring and hit a powerbomb onto him, with Kasai once again kicking out to a loud chant of Kasai. But Ishikawa would pick Kasai up one more time and this time hit a splash mountain powerbomb on Kasai, and this time it would be enough to put away Kasai for the Ishikawa win, as Ishikawa defeats Kasai. Kasai, for the second time in 4 months, ends up, costing himself the match by trying to carve himself with the light tube and being distracted by it as his opponent would take advantage of it. So, an awesome match overall. Again, these Korakuen Hall Junkasai death matches are going to be a staple for the promotion, and we're just at the beginning. This is an awesome match, but it's going to get better and better each time as Kasai's kind of learning, what to do to perfect, this style of match, as Kasai is becoming a bigger and bigger star pretty much every time he has a match like this.
The Apache Army would run their last show of the year on December 31st at Shinkiba, with 2 more Apache Army versus Apache Demolition matches, with the main event for the WEW Tag Team titles. Can you talk about these 2 matches?
So Kanemaru and Kuroda, they're going to team up with Shinobu on this show to take on the Demolition team of Tomohiko Hashimoto, Kinjo Nishimura, and Koei Sato. The Apache Demolition team, they would jump the Apache Army right as the bell would ring, and they would all brawl around ringside, with Kanemaru coming back once again, bleeding, getting back in the ring. Kanemaru would go at it with Nishimura, where he would end up hitting a Death Valley bomb on him, and then a spinning power bomb, and then slam him for Shinobu to hit a shooting star press on him, followed by Kanemaru hitting a senton splash on him, when the newest member of the Apache Demolition group would hit the ring, a guy going by the name Hazard, who is a mass wrestler. He would hit Kanemaru over the head with a cane shot, and then Kanemaru would eventually end up grabbing the cane and begin hitting Hashimoto with it, but Kanemaru would hit the ropes and Hazard would end up grabbing his leg. Koei Sato, Hashimoto, and Nishimura would then all attack Kanemaru before Hazard would set off fireworks in the back of Kanemaru's head and then hit him with a lariat, followed by Hashimoto delivering a choke slam on Kanemaru for the win. So once again, the Apache Demolition team defeats the Apache Army team, again, just to establish this Demolition team. Every time there's a new member to screw over the Apache Army. And then Hiroki and Yusaku Obata, they defend the WEW tag titles against Takeshi Minamino and Manji Maru. Hashimoto would interfere throughout this match, and when Obata would go for the Phoenix Splash, he would be met by Nishimura that would allow Manji Maru to powerbomb Obata. Eventually, the Apache Army, they would come to help out clear the ring of the Apache Demolition, besides Hazard, who would try to set fireworks again, this time though to Obata's face, but Obata would move out of the way, and he would end up getting Manji Maru instead with the fireworks. That would allow Obata to hit the Phoenix Splash on Manji Maru to get the wins. So Hiroki and Yusaku Obata defend the WEW tag titles. Finally, the Apache Army get a win over the Apache Demolition group. They finally get the win over an Apache Demolition team to give the Apache Army some respectability here. It's not just completely being destroyed each and every time by the Apache Demolition. Finally, the Apache Army get the win to end the year.
Okay, Brett, can you tell everyone where they can find you at?
Yeah, so you can find my website at bahufmw.com or fmwwrestling.us, where I have biographies of most of the FMW wrestlers. I have results going over the last 30 years. I have news articles covering the past 20 years up to today, including talking about Atsushi Onita and Sanzahiro Takagi starting up their own exploding bat promotion. So I have details about that promotion starting up. You can also buy DVDs and MP4s of FMW shows. I have the entire FMW library. I have everything after FMW, including the last 10 years of Freedoms. You can also find me on Twitter at BahuFMW, where I post news and anything that's going on, as well as 1-minute clips of anniversary of FMW shows. And you can also find me on Instagram at BahuFMW World, where I go through all my Japanese wrestling magazines and post really cool and interesting pictures. I have about 3,500 pictures already posted. You can also find my Facebook group, History of FMW, where you can interact and talk with other FMW fans, and I've posted all the History of FMW videos up there as well. You can also find my YouTube page, Brett FMW, where I have now gotten all the History of FMW videos back up, so you can watch them there. And also, I'm going to be trying to start back up a podcast channel with all the History of FMW videos in audio form, so if you want to just listen to them on your phone, I'm working on doing that here pretty soon, hopefully. And that's pretty much it.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back for the next episode where we will be going over the year 2012. See you then.